Sup folks, this is the part 2, of What If Deku was a Quirkless Villain, Chapter 7. Midoriya was laying on his bed, looking at the photo he took with Class 1A. Midoriya never realized it until now, but his entire demeanor had changed. He was no longer the happy-go-lucky kid, with eyes filled with hope and wonder. Midoriya now had cold fish eyes and a rather bland expression. The only time Midoriya ever got a genuine smile was when he was in a good fight or doing work analysis. "Why do I still have this photo?" said Midoriya as he took another glance at the photo in his hand. He crumbled up the photo and put it in the trash. Deku shouted Shigaraki into the intercom that was connected to Midoriya's room. "Yay?" responded Midoriya. "Get your ass to the bar now," Shigaraki shouted once more and left the intercom. "Guess I better go," said Midoriya as he made his way to the League's main hideout. Shigaraki and Kurogiri were wounded, much to Midoriya's surprise. Midoriya made his way back to the bar to help up Kurogiri, who was barely able to stand. "Kurogiri, what happened?" Midoriya questioned Kurogiri as he moved him to a bar stool. "We tried to recruit Stain, and we were a little overwhelmed," said Kurogiri as he looked in Shigaraki's direction. "Grrr, the bastard cut my arm." "Hey Deku, Stain trained you, right?" Shigaraki asked angrily as he made his way to a table. "Yeah, he trained me, so what?" responded Midoriya as he began to subtly move his hand to his holstered blade. Before Shigaraki could say anything, a devilish smile spread across his face. "I want you to go to Hazu, Deku. Stain said he might join our group if our views aligned. So go to him, and convince him," explained Shigaraki as he tried to hide his smile. "Sure, but I'm not sure if even I'll be able to convince him," responded Midoriya. Midoriya quickly made his way back to his apartment to change into his costume. Midoriya knew very well Stain would never join the League no matter what he told him. Regardless, Midoriya did want to see his old mentor and get some fresh air. After putting on his costume, Midoriya quickly returned to the bar where Kurogiri was waiting to teleport him. "Kurogiri, I'm ready," said Midoriya as he made last-minute checks to his costume. "Very well Deku," responded Kurogiri as he opened up a mist portal and dropped Deku off on top of a building. "Thank you," said Midoriya as he looked over the city. "Good luck," Kurogiri responded as he teleported back to the League's hideout. "Hey, I get to kill two birds with one stone," chuckled Shigaraki as he eyed the three Namas before him. Midoriya was traversing rooftops looking for Stain when he received a phone call from an unlisted number. "Hello?" Midoriya answered. "Hey kid, it's me," responded Stain. Midoriya was caught by surprise to hear his old mentor's voice again. It had been a couple months since he last heard from him. "Stain, why are you calling me?" asked Midoriya, pulling the phone a bit closer to his face. "Listen, I think I need your help with this guy I am chasing, plus I know you are in Hazu looking for me," explained Stain. Midoriya knew Stain wouldn't change his mind, but he did want to catch up with his old teacher. "Send me your location, I'll be right over," said Midoriya as he received a text with Stain's current location. "Be quick, I just cornered him into an alley," said Stain as he hung up the call. "What does Stain need my help with? It can't be some random hero," pondered Midoriya as he made his way to the location given to him. Midoriya soon reached his destination only to find Stain was in a heated battle with pro-hero Native. Native was doing his best dodging Stain and his attacks, but it wasn't enough. Stain quickly found an opening and quickly threw a knife at Native's right arm, causing him to recoil in pain. Stain dashed toward the hero, pulling the knife out of his arm, and then proceeded to lick the blood off the Stain's knife, activating his quirk. Midoriya, out of respect for his mentor and the hero, decided not to interfere with the fight. "I don't think you needed my help with this one," said Midoriya as he stepped over the defeated hero. He was paralyzed due to Stain's quirk. Stain ignored Midoriya's words and made his way towards the downed hero. Midoriya knew immediately the current mental state Stain was in at the moment. "Stain, don't do this." "Not now," said Midoriya as he grabbed Stain's arm. "Move," demanded Stain as he swung his arm towards Midoriya. Midoriya was expecting retaliation from his mentor, so he was able to dodge, But before Midoriya or Stain could make another move, they were interrupted. "Hero killer!" shouted the knight, followed with a kick which connected with Stain's left arm. Stain quickly swung his katana towards the knight's face, knocking off his mask and exposing his face. Underneath the mask, revealed Tenya. "Iida, a student at Iida, kid. Get out of here, this is no place for children," demanded Stain as he looked towards the assailant. "Tenya Iida, he's a student at Iida and Ingenium's brother," said Midoriya to Stain as he looked in Tenya's direction. "Hero killer Stain, I've been pursuing you. I am," said Tenya before he was interrupted by Stain. Stain lifted his blade directly up to the student's face. "Your eyes, you are out for revenge, aren't you? Choose your next words carefully, boy. Despite your age, I won't hesitate to kill you," said Stain menacingly. "I am the younger brother of the hero you attacked. Brother to the most amazing hero among heroes. I've come to stop you in my brother's stead. So remember this name with the little time you have left, villain. Ingenium the hero WHO will take you down," shouted Tenya as he directed a kick towards Stain. Stain jumped up in the air and kicked Tenya in his arm with his spiked boots, causing him to recoil from the pain. Stain lifted up his right leg and kicked Tenya's head into the concrete, pinning him down and stabbing his arm in the process. "So weak, you and your brother," said Stain as he looked over the defeated student's body. "Shut up. The damage you did means he will probably be crippled for the rest of his life. He was a great hero. He was my hero, he inspired my dreams. I'll kill you for what you did," shouted Tenya as he laid on the floor bleeding. "Idiot. Are you so blinded by your revenge you can't understand the situation you're in, Tenya Iida?" said Midoriya as he took a step forward to the student. Before the student could respond, Midoriya began to speak. "Did you even bother to think if you could save the hero before you? This man is about to be killed and you are so wrapped in your own quest for vengeance, you've forgotten what it means to truly be a hero. You're wielding your power for your own sake," explained Midoriya as he looked down on the student. Tenya was speechless, his eyes widened by hooded villain's words. "Selfishness is furthest thing from a hero, Tenya Iida," said Midoriya, taking another step closer to the student. He crippled my brother," clamored Tenya, processing the villain's words. "Would your brother approve of your actions? Stop thinking about yourself for a moment, and consider what your brother would want," Midoriya continued. "Well said, Deku. Stain," interrupted Ingenium, "consider yourself a sacrifice for a better society," said Stain, oozing his murderous intent. Stain slowly lifted his katana over the boy's head. "Stain, wait. You can't, he's just a kid," exclaimed Midoriya as he reached for Stain's katana. Midoriya wasn't close enough to stop Stain. "Shit, I'm not going to be able to stop him. He's going to die," he thought to himself before he was interrupted by a sudden pain in his chest. A winged Nomu had slammed Midoriya and Stain into the side of the alley. "Grrr, Tamura," exclaimed Stain as he picked himself up out. "Guess Nomus really are brain dead," said Midoriya as he rubbed the back of his neck. The winged Nomu, however, quickly resumed its assault and swooped down, using its bird-like feet to grab a hold of Midoriya. Midoriya instantly pulled out his blade and stabbed the winged beast in the chest. Nomu, however, did not react to the pain and did a 180 in midair and threw Midoriya against a dumpster. "He Tonight I will get rid of you both. Deku, Stain, you both annoy me so much," cackled Shigaraki as he watched his Nomu fight Midoriya and Stain. Kurogiri personally liked Midoriya, but he had no other choice than to sit and watch. "Stain, make sure to keep these guys paralyzed. After that, lend me a hand," said Midoriya, dodging the Nomu's claws. Midoriya couldn't get too close to the Nomu without being blown away by the air pressure made by his wings, but he had an idea. "My knife is still stuck in its chest. If I can just grab it and hand it to Stain," Midoriya said aloud as he glanced at the blade stuck in the Nomu's chest. Stain's timing couldn't have been more perfect as he jumped up and clipped the Nomu's right wing with his katana. The Nomu began to plummet to the ground, its right wing now clipped. Midoriya saw his chance and jumped towards the beast, retrieving his knife from its chest. Stain catch! Shouted Midoriya as he threw the blood-stained knife to his mentor. You lose, said Stain as he licked the blade. The Nomu fell to the floor paralyzed by Stain's quirk. Criminals who wave their power idly. Fake heroes consumed by wealth and self-interest. I must purge them from society, said Stain as he walked over to the downed beast, stabbing its exposed brain, killing it instantly. Grrr. Why doesn't anything go my way? Everyone is a cheater. They cheated. That brat Deku and Stain, shouted Shigaraki angrily as scratched at his neck furiously. Shall I take us home, Shigaraki? Kuragi re-asked ya. Yay, take me back, I'm sick of these cheaters, responded Shigaraki, still clawing at his neck. Kuragi reopened a warp gate and teleported back to the League of Villains base. Stain began to walk over to Tenya and Native, who were still under the effects of his quirk. Shit. He's in his bloodlust mode again. I have to get these guys out of here before he kills them, Midoriya said to himself. Midoriya couldn't save both of them and he wasn't sure how well he would hold up against Stain in his bloodlust state. He had to choose. Tenya, Iida or Native. Shit, I'm sorry it had to come to this. He's just a kid. I can't let someone die so young, said Midoriya as he lifted Tenya onto his shoulder. It's okay, I'm okay with this. I just hope he turns into a great hero someday, said Native, closing his eyes. No. This isn't what I wanted, choked Tenya, looking over to Native, who was prepared for death. Your selfishness caused this, Tenya. Iida. Your personal grudge is going to cost Native's life. Learn from this and become a better hero, said Midoriya as he began to walk Tenya out of the alley. No, I don't want this. Take me instead, shouted Tenya as he burst out in tears. I like that look in your eye, Ingenium. It's the look of self-sacrifice, the face of a hero. Today and only today will I spare you both. However, I must do one thing, said Stain as he began to walk towards Tenya and Midoriya. Midoriya sighed in relief, but he knew all too well what Stain was about to do. Flashback: you will be marked Midoriya, and you will spread my name, said Stain as he looked over to Midoriya. Now then, show me your chest, demanded Stain. Midoriya took off his shirt and exposed his scar-filled chest. The left side of his chest right above his heart was devoid of all scars. Stain raised the knife and carved the letters HK onto Midoriya's chest. Midoriya was used to the pain, but it still hurt. Any normal person would scream in pain. Blood dripped down onto the cold concrete floor. Flashback: and now then, are you prepared, Ingenium? Said Stain as he looked over to the student, knife in hand. Yes, I am prepared to do anything, said Tenya nervously. Deku, remove his armor and expose his back, demanded Stain as he looked over to Midoriya. Midoriya nodded, and removed Tenya's armor and shirt. Remember this day, Ingenium, the day you were reformed into a true hero, by the hero killer Stain, shouted Stain as he pressed his blade against Tenya's back. Tenya was terrified and nervous, but he knew this was the only way out. Don't worry, Ingenium, you'll be alright, I promise, Midoriya said softly, taking off his hood and metal mask, exposing his softened face. Tenya calmed down at the sight of Midoriya's face and words. Stain, without warning, began to carve a huge S onto Tenya's back. Tenya began to scream in agony as the blade began cutting his back. Tenya soon passed out after 15 seconds due to the pain. Native only watched in horror as a 15-year-old cried in agony in front of him. This may have been a bit overboard, Stain, said Midoriya as he looked at the huge S on the teen's back. Midoriya wiped the blood and applied his advanced ointment to the cut. Stain, we should get out of here, the police will be here any minute now, said Midoriya as he struggled to put Tenya's shirt back on. Deku, my student until we meet again, said Stain as he parkoured his way up the building and disappeared. Make sure nothing happens to him, Native, said Midoriya as he put on his metal face mask and hood. Midoriya quickly made his way up the building and left just before the police arrived. The next morning, Midoriya was organizing his files when the monitor mounted on his wall turned on. Deku, I need to speak to you in private. Please come to this address," said All For One. The monitor turned off, leaving Midoriya confused. "That was weird. I wonder what Sensei wants," Midoriya said as he received a text with an address from an unlisted number. "I guess I better go right away," said Midoriya as he walked out of his apartment. 1 hour later Midoriya reached the location. It was an abandoned warehouse in Hazu. "Guess this is it," said Midoriya as he made his way inside the warehouse. The warehouse was dimly lit, but Midoriya could make out multiple tubes, each occupied by Nomu. "Deku, I'm glad you're here," said All For One sitting at a table. He was connected to multiple life support devices. "Sensei," Midoriya said, bowing in respect to the man. "Likewise Deku, please sit," said All For One. Midoriya took a seat across from him. "You have pushed this group of ours to new heights, and for that I thank you. I'm sure you are informed in the capabilities of my quirk, so I'll skip the details. As a gift from me to you I will grant you any quirk you desire," explained All For One. Midoriya was surprised at the offer. He could have any quirk he wanted, his lifelong dream to be like everyone else. However, Midoriya's thoughts quickly turned sour, as he remembered all the bullying, neglect, pain, and suffering everyone put him through. "Sensei, I'm honored, but I can't accept this gift. If I accept this power, I will succumb to the society that abused and neglected me," explained Midoriya. "I see, that is admirable Deku, but I must gift you with something," said All For One firmly. Midoriya was at a crossroads. He didn't want anything in particular. In fact, he wanted to visit his mother, but at this moment in time it was impossible. "Wait, there may be something," said Midoriya looking over at the Nomus. Chapter 8. Iida was being treated by the nurses when two men walked into the room. "Tenya, Iida? I am Kenji Tsurigami and this is Namasa Tsukauchi. We have some questions for you," said Kenji as he closed the door behind him. "Of course," responded Tenya. "I won't beat around the bush, Tenya. This is about the hero killer and what happened that night," said Namasa. "I'll do anything to aid you officers, ask away," said Tenya firmly. "Thank you Tenya. Now why did you pursue the hero killer?" Namasa asked. I was seeking revenge for my brother Ingenium. Enraged by my brother's condition, I wanted to make the hero killer pay for what he did. I was so blinded by vengeance, I didn't realize I was becoming less and less of a hero," explained Tenya. Namasa began to write down everything in his notepad. "What you did was reckless and foolish, but I'm glad you're alive." "One more question Tenya, why did the hero killer let you live?" asked Namasa looking directly at the student. "He wanted to kill me at first, but his ally stepped in and began to move my body away from the hero killer. Stain was prepared to kill Native in my place. I begged him to take me instead, and he made a deal with me," said Tenya, cringing at the thought of Stain an ally, you say? "What deal did he propose?" asked Namasa. "His ally was no older than 15. I know because he took off his mask and hood to show me his face. He had short black hair and green eyes," explained Tenya looking over at his bandaged arm. Namasa's ears perked up at the sound of green eyes, but he needed to make sure. "Tenya, can you recall the name of Stain's ally? And please tell us the deal you made with Stain," said Namasa. Tenya shuddered at the thought of his scar. The deal was he could carve this into my body," said Tenya as he took off his shirt and revealed his back. A large scar could be seen, a giant letter S. Namasa and Kenji were both caught off guard at the size of the scar. It looked painful. "As for his ally, his name is Deku, and he saved my life and steered me back into the path of a hero," Tenya explained. "Thank you Tenya, that was all the questions we had," said Namasa as he made his way into the hallway. Kenji quickly followed after. Flashback. "Ding dong mom, it's Detective Namasa. I have some questions to ask you," said Namasa. The door opened slowly to reveal Inko Midoriya. She seemed to have slimmed down a bit and looked a bit pale. "Ah, Detective, please come in. Some tea?" asked Inko as she signaled Namasa inside. "No thank you mom, I have coffee," said Namasa, hanging his hat at the entrance. "I hate seeing people like this," said Namasa to himself as he walked into her house. Namasa began to update Inko on Midoriya's case and any leads they may have on her son and his disappearance. "Well ma'am, that's all I have at the moment," said Namasa as he retrieved his hat from the entrance. "Thank you so much detective, please find my baby," said Inko as a single tear rolled off her cheek. Namasa simply smiled and nodded, but before he could leave one last question arose in his head. "Mom, before I go, does the name Deku mean anything to you?" asked Namasa. Inko flinched at the name. She knew Deku was the nickname Bakugo gave Midoriya to tease him. Inko insisted in intervening, but Midoriya would always put on a smile and say everything was alright. "Yes, it's the nickname Bakugo gave Midoriya to tease him. It means someone who can't do anything," said Inko, tearing up. "I see. I swear I'll find your son," said Namasa. Flashback. "And so Deku is Midoriya, huh? I kept my promise. I found your son, I found Midoriya," said Namasa, looking at a photo of Midoriya and the hooded villain Deku. "Somewhere in Hazuso. Who's on the list?" Kurogiri asked Midoriya. "A man named Dabi. He's a male mid-20s, I'd say. He possesses a pyrokinetic quirk," explained Kurogiri as he handed Midoriya a photo of Dabi. "With a face like that he will be easy to find. Did he mention where we will be meeting him?" asked Midoriya, scanning the area for Dabi. "He said in an alleyway near the train station," responded Kurogiri. Midoriya and Kurogiri soon made their way to the alleyway. It was a dark and damp alley full of trash. "He should be here," Kurogiri said, looking down the alley. "He is there. Come on, out Dabi and put those flames out," Midoriya said, firmly standing his ground. Dabi slowly appeared out of the darkness with both his hands up. "You got me, O League of Villains," said Dabi. "So Dabi, are you willing to join the League?" asked Kurogiri. "If our ideals meet, maybe I'll join," Dabi responded. "What exactly are your ideals, Dabi? What drives you?" Midoriya asked. "I follow the hero killer's mission, to rid the world of fake heroes," replied Dabi. "I see. Well, Stain himself trained me and taught me all I know. I too believe the term hero has lost its purpose," explained Midoriya. "Stain trained you? Wait, you're the Deku? I saw your fight with Captain Celebrity on the internet. A lot of people would kill to be trained by Stain." Dabi said. "Yes, Stain trained me, and Deku is my villain name. Now what is your decision, Dabi?" asked Midoriya. "I want to meet your boss first. If we see eye to eye I'll join," responded Dabi. "Excellent. However, if you do not mind, we have 2 more stops to make," explained Kurogiri, opening up a portal. "That's fine," said Dabi as he stepped through the portal. "Who's next?" asked Midoriya. "Kenji Hakishi. She goes by Mag, brutal and is accused of murder," said Kurogiri. "She sounds fun," said Midoriya, showing his disinterest. Midoriya, Dabi, and Kurogiri soon teleported to their desired location. A large figure could be seen beating down a man in the distance. Kurogiri approached the large figure cautiously. "Excuse me, but could you be Mag by any chance?" Kurogiri asked the large woman. "Yay? What's it you?" responded Mag, turning to the group of 3. "We are the League of Villains," and said Midoriya before he was interrupted by Mag. "Say no more, I'm in," said Mag. "No. May I ask why you want to join?" asked Midoriya. "I want to join the League so I can be free to live the life I choose," responded Mag, cleaning her blood-stained hands on her shirt. "I see. Well, that is not a problem. The League will provide you with that and much more. Now then, please follow us through the portal," said Kurogiri as he opened the portal, allowing Magna and Dabi to step through. "That was easier than I thought. So who's left?" Kurogiri asked Midoriya. "We only have one left, Himiko Toga. She has transformation quirk and appears to be fairly young," explained Kurogiri, handing a photo over to Midoriya. "So where do we meet her?" asked Midoriya. "On the rooftop of a high school. It is currently 5 p.m. so we needn't worry about the staff," explained Kurogiri. "Okay, but before we go I need to do something," said Midoriya as he made his way to the man Magn was beating up. The man was unconscious, but his wounds seemed serious. "There is no reason for you to die here," said Midoriya as he took out his healing balm and began to clean and treat the man's wounds. "Alright, let's go, Kurogiri. I'm done here," said Midoriya as he walked towards the portal. Kurogiri simply nodded in confirmation. and they disappeared into thin air. "Why are we at a high school?" asked Dabi, looking over to Midoriya and Kurogiri. "We were told to meet someone at this rooftop," said Midoriya, looking around. The rooftops was fairly large and had many bushes scattered throughout the roof. "Yes, she should be here," said Kurogiri. "She concealed her presence. Smart, I can't even sense her. I'll need to use it, mental state, to detect this girl." Flashback to combat training. "Today I'm going to start teaching you a special technique, Midoriya. This technique will enhance your mind and body to react 15x faster than the average person," explained Stain as he gestured Midoriya to sit across from him. "That sounds impossible, Stain. How could you?" asked Midoriya before he was interrupted by Stain. "Shut up and learn," Stain demanded. Midoriya quickly shut his mouth and gave his full attention to Stain. "Now, breath in and out slowly. Feel the air enter and exit your body, the particles in the air touching our bodies," Stain explained. Midoriya did as he was told and was amazed. He could feel every single thing throughout his body. He could hear everything, his heart and Stain's. "Tapping into your senses is not easy. In time you will be able to do incredible things, kid, but when you do tap into it, it's a feeling like no other," Stain explained. 3 weeks later. "Remember what I taught you? You ready?" Stain asked Midoriya. "Yes," replied Midoriya. Midoriya began to slow down his breathing, allowing his body to feel and hear everything around him. "Now," shouted Stain as he threw his knife straight towards Midoriya's face. Midoriya quickly opened his eyes and finally saw what Stain was talking about. The knife was moving in slow motion. Midoriya moved his face to the side as to dodge the knife. The knife quickly zipped by Midoriya's face. Stain and Midoriya smiled. "Good stuff, kid. However, don't push it. You can only hold it for so long, and it has its drawbacks. While in this state your attacks will be weak as hell, so I advise you don't attack. In time you will be able to hold the mental state for at least 25 minutes, explained Stain. "Is there any more techniques I should know about, Stain?" asked Midoriya. "Well, I never said there was just one mental state. I can tap into vigilance and slaughter," Stain explained to his student. "Slaughter, that one sounds nice," said Midoriya with a chuckle. "It's basically bloodlust turned up to 11. I doubt you will ever use it. However, for now just focus on the one you know now, kid," Stain said, tossing Midoriya a notebook full of research on mental state. Flashback, and Midoriya closed his eyes and began to feel everything around him. "There you are," Midoriya said aloud as he quickly turned around to grab a petite blonde girl by her wrist, throwing her away from him. Magna and Dabi were impressed at Midoriya's reaction speed and awareness. "You're cute, I'm Toga," said Toga as she dashed towards Midoriya, knife in hand. "Great, a crazy one," said Midoriya as he dodged the knife. Midoriya swiftly got behind Toga, taking the knife out of her hand and positioned the knife next to her neck. "That's enough. You lost," said Midoriya. "Guess Stain really did train you. I can see some of his moves in you," said Dabi. "This kid was trained by the hero killer?" Magna added. "Yes, that is correct," Kurogiri confirmed. Toga began to blush uncontrollably, and her face went bright red. "Ah, Stainy, you trained with Stainy. I want to see his blood. I want to be like him," Toga said manically. Midoriya was confused and uneasy. The girl seemed mentally unstable. "You know, I really like blood," said Toga. Toga slowly caressed Midoriya's hand which held the knife. "The warmth, the taste," said Toga as she began to press the knife against her throat and began to cut across slowly. "What the fuck is she doing?" Midoriya thought as he let go of the knife. "I want to see your blood," shouted Toga as she grabbed the knife and stabbed Midoriya in the leg. Midoriya didn't flinch or react to the pain. Instead he brought Toga towards him and punched her square inches the jaw, knocking her out cold. "Not as smooth as I wanted it to go, but we got the job done," said Midoriya, looking over to the unconscious girl. "Kinda," Midoriya said, shrugging his shoulders. "Forgive me, Deku, I could not intervene. You were much too close to Toga for me to open a portal," explained Kurogiri. No, it's fine, Kurogiri. Let's just take them back to the hideout," said Midoriya, pulling the knife out of his leg. Magna and Dabi were stunned and impressed. Someone so young possessed such fighting ability and will. Kurogiri opened a portal back to the League hideout. If you all would please step through the portal, Shigaraki Tamura will be awaiting our arrival," said Kurogiri. Midoriya lifted Toga onto his shoulder and walked through the portal, followed by Dabi and Mag. "Back at the League of Villains hideout we have returned with the new recruits," Shigaraki Tamura said. "Kurogiri, about time," said Kurogiri as he finished stacking his house of cards. Tamura turned to look at the group of recruits and Deku. He couldn't help but smile at the sight of Deku injured. "Looks like the blondie is coming around," said Dabi as he signaled over to Toga, who was regaining consciousness. "Alright, it was nice meeting you all, but I've done my part here. Sorry for making a mess on the floor, Kurogiri," said Midoriya as he began to make his way to his apartment. "It's no problem, Deku," said Kurogiri as he mopped the blood off the floor. In Midoriya's apartment, Midoriya was putting on the final stitch in his leg. "What a day. At least Dabi seemed reasonable," said Midoriya as he put his medical supplies away. "Back at Udate, you're all going to summer camp," Aizawa announced those who failed the practical exam. "This camp is for you," Aizawa explained, as he eyed 5 students in particular. "Well, regardless, I'm glad everyone will be able to go," Gyro added. Class 1A quickly began to talk about supplies and clothing. Tenya was unusually ecstatic. "You're awfully energetic," Tenya said. Okako, walking over to Tenya. "Yes, we are heroes after all," responded Tenya energetically. "I know, we should all go shopping tomorrow," suggested Taru happily. All of Class 1A agreed to meet the next day at the mall and buy whatever they needed for camp together. At the Midoriya household, 9 p.m. Inko was cleaning her dish when she heard a knock at her door. Who could it be at this hour? Inko asked herself as she made her way to the door. Inko slowly opened the door to reveal Namasa. "Good evening, ma'am. May I come in?" asked Namasa. "Of course, detective. Please make yourself at home," responded Inko, quickly opening the door for him. "You may want to sit down for this," said Namasa, taking off his shoes and hanging his coat. Inko was afraid of the news she was about to receive, but she proceeded to sit at her couch, preparing for the worst. "Mum," said Namasa. "Here it comes," said Inko to herself, closing her eyes tightly. "I found Midoriya. I found your son," said Namasa. "Huh?" said Inko, shocked at Namasa's words. "Yes, you heard me right. I found Midoriya and he's alive and well," said Namasa, handing a photo of Midoriya. "You found Izuku. You found my baby," cried Inko as she got up from the couch and fell to her knees. "Ma'am, are you okay?" asked Namasa, getting up from his seat. "I'm fine. I'm just so happy." "But why does he look so different? His hair and his whole demeanor are different," said Inko, looking at the photo of Midoriya. "About that, Midoriya unfortunately has become a villain," explained Namasa. "A villain? But Midoriya was obsessed with heroes. He would never become a villain," responded Inko. "Midoriya was missing for a year. People can change," said Namasa. "My baby a villain? It's all so much," choked Inko, picking up a framed photo of Midoriya. He was smiling and his eyes were full of happiness then. The photo of him now, however, told a different story. Midoriya is a villain, yes, however, he has not committed any major crimes. In fact, he has done more good than harm," Namasa replied, showing Inko her son's criminal record. "Izuku always wanted to help anyone in need. I'm glad that side of him hasn't changed." Inko sighed in relief. "Although Midoriya hasn't done any major offenses, he's still a villain and we will bring him to justice," said Namasa firmly. I understand," Inko replied. The next day. "Good morning, Kurogiri," Deku greeted as he took a seat at the bar. "Good morning, Deku," Kurogiri replied, serving Midoriya his usual breakfast. "Deku, I forgot to mention, Shigaraki wanted to see you. He said to meet him at the Kashi Ward Mall later today," Kurogiri said as he shined a shot glass with a piece of cloth. "What does he want now?" asked Midoriya as he finished his breakfast. "I'm not sure myself. However, the meeting yesterday with the 2 recruits nearly ended in bloodshed. That might be the reason," Kurogiri responded, picking up Midoriya's plate. "I see, thanks for the breakfast, Kurogiri. I'll be heading out now," said Midoriya as he got up from the bar stool. "My pleasure, Deku. Be wary of Kurogiri. He left quite agitated earlier. You know how irrational he can be when things don't go his way," Kurogiri stated, setting down the glass. I'm always on guard Kurogiri, replied Midoriya walking out the door always. Said Midoriya as he made his way to the train station. At Kashi Ward Mall. Alright, I have to blend in, said Midoriya as he made his way into the mall. Midoriya changed his entire demeanor the moment he entered the mall. He changed his usual bored expression to a happy-go-lucky teen out shopping on a weekend. Alright, now where is Shigaraki, said Midoriya in a low voice as he made his way through the crowd. The mall was extremely crowded on weekends, so navigating through the crowd without bumping into someone was nearly impossible. Midoriya was making his way through the crowd when a tall teen with glasses bumped into him. He was accompanied by two girls and a red-haired boy. I'm sorry. I didn't see where I was going, said the boy as he turned to look at the person he bumped into. Don't worry about it, replied Midoriya in a cheery voice. Midoriya instantly recognized the group. It was Tenya, Iida, Okako Uraraka, Mina Ashido, and Ejiro Kirishima. Said Iida, recognizing Midoriya instantly. Is this a friend of yours, Iida? Asked Okako. Yeah, introduce us. Mina added, unable to contain her excitement. Does he go to a Kaminari? Asked. Oh wow, it's the 1A first years. I'm a big fan. Uraraka, your zero gravity is amazing. That fight with that explosion guy was intense. Said Midoriya, looking over to Uraraka and Mina. Your acid is amazing. I bet you can do all sorts of stuff. Your quirk is also super cool. Midoriya added as he directed his attention to Mina and Kirishima. I can't believe people still remember that, haha, said Uraraka bashfully. Really you think my quirk is amazing? Asked Mina happily. I have a pretty basic quirk, but I'm glad you think it's cool, Kirishima added with a smile. I wanted to thank you, said Tenya, taking a step forward towards Midoriya. Midoriya slowly took a step back, a habit he picked up from Stain. No need, Tenya. You just needed some help is all, said Midoriya as he took another step back. Hey, sorry, I have to go. Midoriya continued as he quickly turned and disappeared into the crowd. Who was that, Iida? Asked Uraraka. Yeah, Iida, I want to be friends with him. He said my quirk was amazing. Mina added, he was the one who saved me in the hero killer incident. He taught me how a true hero was supposed to act, said Tenya. Looking into the crowd of people, the group fell silent. They tried to avoid talking about the Hazu incident and the massive scar Tenya had on his back. Flashback. Tenya will be suspended for an entire day, Aizawa stated to the students. What, why? Asked Sero. I'm getting to that, so pipe down, said Aizawa as his eyes began to glow red. Class 1A fell silent at their teacher's orders. Tenya is currently in the hospital. He tried to exact his revenge on the hero killer on his own. Thankfully he's alive. But what he did was reckless and stupid. Tenya's actions will not go unpunished, explained Aizawa firmly. The hero killer? Seriously? Said Kaminari and many other students. Class 1A was awfully quiet the rest of that day. Flashback. Midoriya was nearing the end of the mall when he spotted a blue-haired teen in a black sweater sitting under a tree. Of course, Midoriya sighed. I'm here like you asked, Shigaraki, said Midoriya as he took a seat next to Shigaraki. There was a pause, and only the chatter of people could be heard before Shigaraki spoke. What makes me and the hero killer different? Asked Shigaraki in a murderous tone. What does that have to do with anything? Midoriya replied, setting his hand on his holstered blade. Those two idiots you brought yesterday, they were stained. This stain that I'm sick of it, said Shigaraki. I hate everything and everyone, but everything I do is being overshadowed by him and it's really starting to piss me off. Shigaraki continued, he can say he has a crusade or whatever, but in the end, all he's doing is destroying what he hates. So, what makes us so different? Asked Shigaraki. The difference? You kill and destroy for no reason at all. It's mindless. On the other hand, Stain has a purpose, his being to purge all fake heroes and reveal the true heroes of society, an example being All Might. You, however, take everything as a game. You lack conviction, Shigaraki. That's the difference. Said Midoriya as he grasped his blade tightly. Ah, it's all so clear now. Feels like I've connected all the dots, about why the hero killer pisses me off so much. And why you're so fucking irritating. I think I get it now. Said Shigaraki, oozing bloodlust. It's because of All Might. Said Shigaraki, shooting a glance at Midoriya, showing his dry face. All Might? What does he have to do with any of this, said Midoriya to himself. The reason these fools can smile and live their lives is 'cause All Might has that stupid grin on his face, smiling wide as to say, "No one can stop me," said Shigaraki with a manic smile on his face. Yeah, if that's why you're his apprentice or whatever and he worships All Might, so that must mean you do too. Shigaraki continued. "You're so annoying, Deku," said Shigaraki as he lunged towards Midoriya. It happened in an instant. Shigaraki lunged towards Midoriya with his right hand aiming for his face. Midoriya pulled out his blade aiming for Shigaraki's neck. Midoriya's blade stopped just before Shigaraki's neck and Shigaraki's hand stopped just before Midoriya's face. The entire altercation happened in mere seconds. Shigaraki and Midoriya both stood down right after. They couldn't bring any more attention to themselves. "I'm going home, I hope you got your answer," said Midoriya as he got up and made his way towards the exit of the mall. "Whatever," replied Shigaraki as he got up began to walk in the opposite direction. The next morning Midoriya was working on his new weapon when he was interrupted by Kurogiri warping into his room. "Good morning, Deku. I hate to interrupt but you're needed at the bar," said Kurogiri as he opened a warp gate for Midoriya to step through. "Sure, no problem," said Midoriya. Midoriya and Kurogiri were soon teleported to the bar. Shigaraki was talking to a group of 8 people. "Midoriya, these are the new recruits," said Kurogiri, signaling over to the group of people. "Hello Dabi, Magn, Toga, good to see you again," said Midoriya, putting one hand over his heart and bowing slightly. "Hey," replied Dabi. "Hello," replied Magn. "Hi Deku. It's me Toga. I think you are cute, but I think a little more blood would make you cuter," said Toga, barely able to control her excitement. Midoriya was still not used to Toga and her weird obsession with blood, but he had to deal with it. Midoriya turned to look at the other 6. "Hello, it's nice to meet you all. My name is Deku," greeted Deku as he bowed. "I'm Jinbu Begawara. But you can call me Twice." "Nice to meet you." "Not really," said Twice, contradicting himself. Midoriya was confused and intrigued by Twice. It was as if 2 people were living in his body. "The name's Muscular, and quit with the bowing shit. I'm here to kill shit, not be friends," scowled Muscular as he made his way to the bar. Midoriya ignored Muscular and directed his attention to a young schoolboy in the group. "Hey, I go by Mustard." "Nice to meet you," greeted Mustard as he made his way to a corner. "He seems awfully young," Midoriya thought, examining at the school uniform the boy was wearing. Midoriya was surprised this many people had joined the league. Tamura hated these kinds of people. "A pleasure. I am Atsuhiro Sako. But please call me Compress," greeted Compress politely. "Would you like to see some magic?" asked Compress, pulling out 3 colored marbles. "Sure, let's see it," replied Midoriya, somewhat intrigued. "Alright, I have 3 marbles here, red, blue, and green. I want you to follow the red one and tell me where you think it is," explained Compress, showing Midoriya the 3 marbles. Compress was quick with his hands, rolling the marbles in between his fingers and throughout his palm. "Now, where is the red one?" Compress asked Midoriya. "It's in your mouth." "Amazing, you can speak clearly with a marble in your mouth," replied Midoriya. Compress was surprised Midoriya was able to see through his trick. He took the marble out of his mouth with a smile. "You have some good eyes, Deku. Thank you for playing my game," Compress said, putting the marbles back in his pocket. Midoriya gave a small smile and made his way to the next member. It was a reptilian-looking man with pink hair. "Hello," Midoriya greeted, but the reptilian shot a mean glance at Midoriya in return. However, "Listen, if you got a problem, spit it out, because whether you like it or not, we're in the same group," said Midoriya, stepping up to the reptilian. "Grr, Shuichi Iguchi is my name. I go by Spinner." "You don't deserve to be Stain's apprentice, you soil his name," Spinner said angrily. "I should have been the one to study under him. Instead he gave the torch to a child," Spinner said angrily. "I didn't ask to be Stain's apprentice, he offered me a chance and I took it." "Stop acting like a child yourself and grow up," Midoriya responded coldly. "Grow up?" shouted Spinner as he threw a punch at Midoriya. Midoriya dodged and grabbed Spinner's arm, throwing him onto the floor and pinning him down. "Are you done?" Midoriya asked, maintaining his grip on Spinner's arm. prepared to break his arm if he tried anything. "Let him go, Deku, before I kill you," said Shigaraki. Midoriya loosened his grip and stood up. Spinner simply growled as he got up from the floor. "Alright, now that you've all met, Shigaraki will be explaining the plan we will be executing tomorrow morning," Kurogiri said, looking over to Shigaraki. Everyone in the room turned to face the blue-haired teen. "We are kidnapping someone of interest to the League tomorrow. You all will be a part of the Vanguard Action Squad. Dabi, you are the leader. Take Compressant twice with you," explained Shigaraki. "Sure, whatever," replied Dabi, showing his disinterest. "Grr. Magn and Spinner, you two are together. Blonde brat, Mustard, you two are going alone," Shigaraki said. "Okay," replied Mustard in a low voice. "Alright then, we got this," replied Magn, looking over to Spinner, who simply rolled his eyes. "Yes sir," replied Toga cheerfully. "Deku, you're with Muscular," he said. Shigaraki hiding his smile. "If you say so," replied Midoriya. "Alright, that is all. We have one more member, Moonfish, but he's not entirely sane. He will be on the battlefield with you all, don't you worry," Kurogiri explained, showing everyone a photo of Moonfish. "Alright, if that's it, I'm leaving," said Midoriya as he opened the front door and walked back to his apartment. Shigaraki had a huge smile on his face, which was covered by a hand. "Tomorrow is going to be great. Hey Muscular, come here for a second, I got a job for you," said Shigaraki in a twisted voice. Chapter 9. In the mountains the air was cold and crisp. At the top of a plateau stood 5 people. "I'm itching to go already. Let's hurry up and move," said Muscular impatiently under his dark cloak. "It's too soon, besides there is no need to do anything flashy," added Mustard. "Yeah, but who died and made you boss?" Dabi added. Midoriya was sitting at the edge of the plateau on the left of Toga. "So bright. Are they stupid? Oh well, what's done is done," said Midoriya to himself, looking over to the bright source of light in the distance. "I mean, this thing is not cute at all," complained Toga, fidgeting with her mask. "I designed them. They weren't meant to be cute, but I'll paint it pink for you next time, Toga," Midoriya said, still looking over at the forest. "Really? Thank you," said Toga, hugging Midoriya from behind. "Whatever," replied Midoriya, ignoring her hug. Midoriya was seemingly emotionless. He didn't care for anyone or anything emotionally except his mother, who he still visited, and himself. "Who cares? Let's just get to it. My blood is pumping like crazy over here," Muscular growled, oozing his bloodlust. "Shut up, you whack jobs. We wait until the rest are here," Dabi commanded. The timing couldn't have been any more perfect, as the other 3 arrived on the scene: Magn, Moonfish, and Spinner. "Sorry to keep you waiting," said Magn, lugging around her weapon, which was wrapped in a cloth. A job," Moonfish said, barely able to speak. Spinner didn't say anything and simply adjusted his costume. He took a glance over to Midoriya, who was still staring blankly into the forest. Spinner growled lowly at the sight of Midoriya. "We will make them understand that their peace rests in our hands," Dabi said loudly, as the entire group except Midoriya rallied behind him. The next day at 7 p.m. Class 1A and 1B were going to be having a test of courage in the forest, a simple game which consisted of scaring the other class. Students began to pour into the forest when the smell of burnt wood caught everyone's attention. Dabi and Mustard began their assault, and cornered the students. Spinner and Magn went off to assault the pussycats. The rest went off on their own except Midoriya and Muscular. "Well, what do we have here? A face that isn't on the list," said Muscular to the child before him. Midoriya was close behind, watching the interaction unfold between Muscular and the young boy. The mission assigned to them was to assault the teachers if Magn and Spinner were to be overrun. "Hey kid, that a slick hat you got on. How about you trade me for this dumb mask? I'm new." So this was all they had, said Muscular, taking a step forward. The boy took one step back in fear. The boy turned around quickly and ran. Muscular, however, activated his quirk muscle augmentation and dashed in front of the young child. "I'm gonna have fun with you," Muscular shouted, augmenting his right arm and throwing a punch towards the child. Muscular, however, was surprised to see Midoriya holding the boy in his arms and setting him down behind him. "Tch, that's no fun," sighed Muscular, staring at Midoriya with murderous eyes. "What's your name, kid?" asked Midoriya, facing Muscular. "Kota," said the Boy shakily alright Kota, stay out of my way said Midoriya as he straightened himself and prepared himself for Muscular's attack. I love how you already know I'm going to kill you, now show me some blood shouted Muscular as he dashed towards Midoriya. Midoriya ducked underneath Muscular's punch and reached into one of his utility holsters. Even if I'm more experienced, I'm still only human. One solid punch from this guy would shatter my body. Midoriya thought as he pulled out a flashbang from his belt and tossed it towards the Muscular man. The flashbang made a loud clang as it went off, making a huge flash of light blinding Muscular. Fuck shouted Muscular, grasping at his eye. Midoriya put all his force into his legs and dashed towards Muscular with his blade in hand. His muscle layer is thick. I'm going to need all my force and weight behind my blade if I want to do any damage, Midoriya said to himself as he stabbed Muscular in the arm. Muscular recoiled from the pain but quickly grabbed Midoriya by the collar, throwing him towards the side of the mountain. Fucking hell, this guy isn't even using his full power either, coughed Midoriya. That one hurt brat, said Muscular as he walked towards Midoriya, who was on the floor coughing up blood. Before you die, I just wanted to let you know, Shigaraki wanted you dead, but so did I. It works out for both of us, said Muscular as he lifted his arm over Midoriya, winding a punch before he was hit in the head with a rock. Water hose. My mom and dad, did you torture them like this when you killed them? Choked Kota, with tears in his eyes. Whoa, you're their kid. This must be fate or something. They're the ones who gave me this glass eye, said Muscular, showing his glass eye to Kota, as he took a few steps in Kota's direction. Because of people like you, things always end up like this. Kota shouted at Muscular, who was unfazed by the child's words. Brats like you sure know how to pass the blame. That's no good. I don't really hold a grudge against them. I killed them like I wanted to in the end. They tried to stop me, we all did our best and had to deal with the results. What's bad is when you can't put your money where your mouth is. Muscular continued, getting closer to Kota, who in turn took a few steps back. Like your mommy and daddy, shouted Muscular, aiming a punch towards Kota. Midoriya was behind Muscular in an instant, but Muscular predicted it and threw a punch backward towards Midoriya. Ah, I knew you'd attack me, you quirkless piece of trash. I have speed and power, shouted Muscular, turning to face Midoriya. Midoriya dodged Muscular's punch, using the large man's arm as footing to dash towards him again. Murder, without conviction, is the greatest sin. Death. Yes. Yes, death is the only cure for the sick, such as yourself, said Midoriya, emanating an insane amount of bloodlust. Muscular's confident demeanor switched to fear at the sight of Midoriya and his sheer intent to kill. Midoriya lodged his arm into one of Muscular's muscle fibers and lifted his blade. Now, your speed is meaningless, said Midoriya as he slashed at Muscular's face with his blade. Muscular brought his head back, barely dodging the blade by an inch. He was cut on his forehead and blood began to spill throughout his face. Muscular grabbed Midoriya by his arm and threw him towards Kota. This kid. Am I afraid? Muscular asked himself as he looked down at his hands, which were shaking uncontrollably. Midoriya lifted himself off the ground and took a single step forward, before stopping suddenly. Where? What just happened? Asked Midoriya as he looked up to see Muscular in front of him, reaching into his pocket. Midoriya then remembered Stain's words, slaughter. It's basically bloodlust turned up to 11 inches, Midoriya remembered as he looked at his hands covered in blood. You pushed me to this state. Playtime is over, Deku. I'm using my serious eye, said Muscular as he put on a red glass eye. Shit. Kota, grab onto me, Midoriya commanded. Kota quickly followed Midoriya's orders and latched onto his back, closing his eyes in the process. Muscular used 100% power and blew a chunk of the mountain's ridge off. The air pressure gave Midoriya a big enough push to send him flying to his desired location. You can't dodge forever, said Muscular, shooting a glance at Midoriya and Kota, who were now behind him. I won't be able to beat him, not like this, said Midoriya, setting down Kota behind him and looking at the crazed man before him. I'll have to test it here, and if it doesn't work, this kid and I are as good as dead, said Midoriya to himself as he reached into one of his utility belts and pulled out a retractable gun and a syringe-looking dart. Now show me some blood, Deku shouted Muscular as he dashed towards Midoriya. Midoriya grabbed Kota by his shirt's collar and jumped to the side, barely dodging. I have to use it now, and I can't hit his fibers, said Midoriya as he loaded the gun with the dart. Midoriya watched as Muscular turned slowly to face him. Nowhere left to go. That means it's time to die, said Muscular, walking slowly towards Midoriya. Alright, please work, Midoriya said to himself as he ran towards Muscular. At least you will die like a man, shouted Muscular, throwing a telegraphed punch towards Midoriya. Midoriya did a spin and dodged the punch. Midoriya pointed the gun at Muscular neck, which was his only opening. Got the, Midoriya said aloud as he pulled the trigger and the gun fired. The dart penetrated Muscular's skin and immediately poured the liquid into him. That was it? Haha, well, it's time to die, Deku shouted Muscular as he threw a punch towards Midoriya. Midoriya wouldn't be able to dodge the punch, he was much too close. However, as Midoriya prepared himself for death, Muscular's muscle fibers instantly retracted midway through his punch. 3 seconds, that's how long it took to take effect, huh? Said Midoriya, taking a mental note whilst folding his dart gun and returning it to its holster. What do you do to me? Asked Muscular, taking a step back. I erased your quirk, now we can have a fair fight, Midoriya explained. Don't you agree? Midoriya asked with a sadistic look on his face. Flashback: a Nomu with the ability to erase quirks. May I ask why? Asked All for One Sensei. As you know, I'm quirkless. I am highly trained and I can handle myself. However, I will lose to sheer brute force, for example All Might, or an individual with a size-increasing quirk. However, I will not use the Nomu for missions, more like a lab rat, explained Midoriya, reading his notes on quirk erasing. I see, you wish to even out the playing field, All for One said with a chuckle. More or less, responded Midoriya, staring at the encased Nomu flashback. And that's right, take it in, Muscular, how the rest of us feel, the quirkless and the weak. Do you feel it? The feeling of being powerless, said Midoriya as he dashed toward Muscular. Muscular threw a large right hook towards Midoriya, who was already in his face. Without your quirk, you're just a man, and without training or power, it's as if I'll be finishing off a downed animal, Midoriya explained as he cut Muscular's arms and legs. Muscular grunted at the pain and shock of his quirk being erased. Midoriya was almost bullying Muscular. The difference in ability was too great. Midoriya had experience in training, meanwhile Muscular relied on his quirk and sheer brute strength to win battles. Grah, fuck you, shouted Muscular, taking another swing only to miss yet again. Don't struggle, I'll make this quick, said Midoriya as he swiftly got behind Muscular and raised his knife. Midoriya bashed Muscular in the back of his head with the handle of the blade, rendering him unconscious. Go to sleep, said Midoriya as he watched the large man fall to the floor. Midoriya quickly cuffed Muscular and moved him against a wall. Psychopaths like you are better behind bars, or dead, said Midoriya as he looked over Muscular's body. Midoriya turned to walk towards Kota before turning around and kicking Muscular in the ribs, shattering two in the process. Sorry, I slipped, chuckled Midoriya as he turned back around and walked towards Kota, who was hiding behind a rock. You beat him, but you're a villain, aren't you? Asked Kota, wiping away his tears. Just a job, kid, besides killing just isn't my style, explained Midoriya as he sat down and took a deep breath. What's your name, please tell me, and can I see your face? Asked Kota shyly. Deku sighed and took off his hood, revealing his face. He saw no harm in showing a child. Deku, and that's all you need to know about me. Now let's take you to your guardians. Midoriya responded, putting his hood back on and signaling Kota to get on his back. Deku. Cool, Kota said to himself as he latched onto Midoriya's back. Midoriya was making his way through the forest when he saw the large building in the distance. Midoriya was interrupted by Dabi's voice in his ear. Deku, it's Dabi, we got the package, make it to the center ASAP. We are waiting on you, hurry up or we're leaving without you, said Dabi into Midoriya's earpiece. He had it muted during his fight with Muscular. Copy, responded Midoriya as he put on his hood again. Aizawa, Vlad and what was left of the pussycats were counting the students when Midoriya appeared out of the forest with Kota. Shino. shouted Kota as he hopped off Midoriya's back and towards his aunt. Kota shouted Shino aka Mandalay as she opened her arms wide open. All the teachers and students turned to see Midoriya standing in the back, standing behind a tree watching silently. Midoriya wanted to make sure Kota made it back safely. "I'll see you around, kid," said Midoriya as he ran back into the forest and towards Dabi's location. "Who was that?" murmured some students from both classes. "Kota, who was that?" asked Shino looking into the dark forest. "His name was Deku, he saved me," explained Kota. Tenya's ears perked up at the name. "He's a villain, but he saved me from the man who killed my mom and dad," choked Kota, trying hard to hold back his tears. "Muscular? He brought him down?" Mandalay asked her nephew. "Yeah, he was so cool," said Kota as he hugged his aunt Shino warmly. "Deku again, huh? Your name just keeps popping up everywhere, doesn't it?" said Aizawa in a low voice as he turned to care for his students. Midoriya soon found his way back to his group. Everyone was there except for Moonfish, Mustard, and Muscular. "Where is Muscular?" asked Dabi. "We got separated in the commotion. Did you guys get whoever Shigaraki wanted?" "And where is Mustard and Moonfish?" replied Midoriya calmly. "Yeah, we got him. As for Moonfish and Mustard, they got taken out," explained Dabi, pulling out his burner cell phone. "Forget Muscular, we can't stay here any longer," Dabi said, signaling Kurogiri on his phone to teleport everyone back. Midoriya turned to face the location where Muscular was. "Shigaraki, my patience has drawn thin," Midoriya said in a low voice, walking through Kurogiri's misty portal. "Back at the League of Villains HQ, did you guys get him?" Shigaraki asked. "Dabi, yeah, we got him," replied Dabi in confirmation. The rest of the Vanguard squad filled the bar including Midoriya. Compress pulled out a marble and presented it to Shigaraki. "Why won't you just die?" Shigaraki thought, looking over to Midoriya. "Well, how do we get him out?" asked Shigaraki angrily. "I recommend preparing some proper restraints first. He is very feisty." Compress said. "I'll get to it," said Kurogiri, teleporting away. Kurogiri returned minutes later with proper restraints. Midoriya was uninterested for the most part. He was thinking hard about something he had to do. "Bring him out," ordered Shigaraki. "As you wish," replied Compress, releasing Bakugo Katsuki from his marble. Bakugo was unconscious, so the League had time to tie him down. Midoriya was spacing off when he turned to see the package they had to retrieve. Midoriya's eyes widened slightly at the sight of his old childhood friend / bully. "He was the one we had to retrieve, are you serious?" Midoriya thought to himself, staring at the unconscious blonde boy. Midoriya made sure to hide his surprised face by putting on his hood. "Hey, why are you hiding your face?" asked Dabi loudly. "I would rather keep my identity secret is all," Midoriya replied him. "I can respect that," Dabi said, looking over to Bakugo. Bakugo wouldn't be awake for another 24 hours, so the League of Villain members went to bed and decided to rest up for tomorrow. Midoriya lay awake in his bed, wondering why Shigaraki wanted Bakugo, and how Midoriya was going to get back at Shigaraki for all he's done. The next day it was currently 6:30 p.m. The League was in the bar talking to Bakugo except Midoriya. "Midoriya, you are needed at the bar," said Kurogiri into the intercom connected to his room. "I'm on my way," replied Midoriya, putting on his villain costume. Midoriya made his way to the bar. Spinner was preaching Stain's crusade when Midoriya made his way into the bar. Spinner gave Midoriya a mean look and continued with his speech. "Any progress, Kurogiri?" asked Midoriya, making his way behind the bar. "Unfortunately no, the young man hasn't spoken a word," replied Kurogiri, looking over to Bakugo, who wore a mean expression. "I see," Midoriya said, looking over to Bakugo. "Dabi, untie him," Shigaraki demanded, looking over to Dabi. "Huh?" Midoriya and Dabi asked in unison. "He'll go wild for sure," replied Dabi. "It's okay, we got to treat him as an equal after all. Besides, our little ass student here should know, he can't win," explained Shigaraki, looking at the restrained teen twice. "You do it," commanded Dabi. "What, me?" "No thanks." Twice replied quickly before he started contradicting himself and untied Bakugo. "Thanks to rules and heroes we have been suffocated, we have all suffered like you. Join us and break free from the shackles heroes have put upon you," explained Compressed to Bakugo. Bakugo sat in his chair massaging his wrist when Shigaraki began to walk in his direction. Before Shigaraki could say anything, Bakugo set off an explosion in his face. "Thought I was gonna croak of OLDH, I hate guys like you. WHO can't get to the point. Basically we want to cause trouble, join US. Would always admired All Might's triumphs. And no matter what you all say, nothing will change that." Bakugo explained loudly. Midoriya was silently observing Bakugo and the League's actions. He didn't want any unnecessary attention, or for Bakugo to reveal his real name, putting Midoriya's mother in potential danger. The TV mounted on the wall began to show a live interview of the U.S. school board and their approach to the situation at hand. Bakugo pursues the title hero more than anyone. If the villains can't see that, they are foolish. Aizawa explained to the reporter, "We are hardly approaching this passively. At this moment we are working with police to retrieve the student who was taken from us." Nezu added, "Hey, good Hey," said Bakugo looking at the screen. "Father," said Shigaraki in a low voice. Midoriya quickly grasped his knife, preparing himself to stop Shigaraki from potentially killing Bakugo. "You mustn't, Shigaraki, calm yourself," shouted Kurogiri as he threw himself to stop Shigaraki from doing anything rash. "Stay back, all of you. This kid is an important pawn. I thought we might understand each other," said Shigaraki looking over to Bakugo. "Nope," Bakugo sneered back, "and we just heard about the hero's search for you, so I won't bother trying to convince you anymore," said Shirigaki, relocating his hand on his face. "Master, lend me your power," Shigaraki asked the monitor. "Very well, a smart choice, Shigaraki Tamura," replied all for one. Little did Shigaraki know the League of Villains hideout was about to be raided by the top heroes in the country. 30 minutes earlier. "Okay, we have their location. This will be a swift operation. Endeavor, you will support the police in the back. All Might, Kamui Woods, Headshot, and Gran Torino, you're on point," explained Namasa to the pros. "One more thing, be on the lookout for this villain. He is to be apprehended at any cost," Namasa added, showing the heroes a photo of Midoriya. All Might's blood went cold at the sight of the young teenager. Meanwhile the others simply acknowledged the order. The heroes all left the conference room except All Might and Namasa. "Namasa, is this villain by any chance Quirkless?" All Might asked, choking on his words. "Yes, he is. I know the connection you have with him. It wasn't your fault, Tasha nor I, but regardless of your view on him, he is still a villain and should be treated as such," replied Namasa, leaving All Might alone in the room. "I'll bring you back, Midoriya," All Might said, fully determined. Flashback and Kurogiri, Compressed. "Let's put him to sleep again," commanded Shigaraki as he took a step towards Bakugo. "I'm impressed with how unwillingly he is to listen to reason," sighed Compressed. Bakugo was posed and ready to defend himself when there was a knock at the door. "Kamino Pizza Ward," said the voice behind the door. The entire league was confused, all except Midoriya. "Well, took them long enough. Guess this is it, the end of the line," Midoriya thought, preparing himself for heroes to come bursting through the door. In that moment the entire wall was blown into by All Might, followed by Headshot and Kamui. "Kurogiri, warp us!" shouted Shigaraki, but Kurogiri was quickly binded by Kamui. Kamui had binded all the villains afterward, followed by Headshot and Gran Torino. Dabi attempted to ignite his flame but was knocked unconscious by Gran Torino. "There is no escape for you, League of Villains, for we are here," said All Might. Spinner and many other villains shuddered at the sight of All Might and his determination. "All Might," shuddered Spinner, looking at the large man. "We're not the only ones you have to worry about." "Kurogiri, bring out the Nomu," shouted Shigaraki. "I'm sorry, Shigaraki Tamura, the Nomu set aside for us are gone," explained Kurogiri nervously. "Your mischief has gone long enough. You have underestimated Bakugo's spirit and our rage," said All Might, staring at the blue-haired teen. "It ends here, Shigaraki Tamura," shouted All Might, looking at the binded villains. "Ends here, huh? No, this is just the beginning. You're all justice this, justice that. We're going to remove you from the picture and show you how fragile your peace really is." Shigaraki said to All Might angrily. Kurogiri shouted Shigaraki. However, the misty figure was knocked out in an instant by Edge shot. What just happened? Is he dead? Asked Toga, concerned for her fellow league member. No, he's just unconscious. I just fiddled with his insides. Explained Edgeshot. Just take it easy. Kenji Hikishi, Atsuhiro Sako, Shuichi Iguchi, Himiko Toga, Jinbu Baigawara, with a little intel and time we figured out all your identities. Said Gran Torino, looking over at the villains. And you the one with the hood on? Said Gran Torino, walking over to Midoriya, who was blinded by Kamui. Midoriya was rather quiet and calm during the entire raid. He knew they lost the moment Kamui blinded all of them in an instant. Gran Torino made his way to Midoriya and pulled back his hood. It took Bakugo a few seconds to realize who it was under the hood, but when he did, his eyes grew wide at the sight. Midoriya. All Might tried his best to maintain his cool, but his demeanor also changed to a surprised look. It had been more than a year since he last seen Midoriya. You're choked, Bakugo. Yes, this is, said Gran Torino before he was cut off by Midoriya. If you say my name, I swear you will pay, explained Midoriya in a low murderous tone. Gran Torino understood how dangerous Midoriya by the change in tone. Gran Torino decided to keep his real name a secret. Gran Torino decided to call him by his villain name. This is the villain Deku. He's wanted by the police, explained Gran Torino. Shigaraki was beginning to lose his cool. He was getting angrier by each passing moment. It can't be defeated just like that? No freaking way. Get out of here. And go to hell, Shigaraki said in a murderous tone. Where is he? Shigaraki shouted. All Might, I hate you, Shigaraki shouted in response. Black liquid, however, began to teleport Nomu at the league base and outside the building. Bakugo and every league member was engulfed by the dark liquid and began to teleport elsewhere. All Might tried to grab hold of Bakugo, but it was far too late. He was gone. Na-oo, shouted All Might at the top of his lungs. Soon everyone was teleported to All for One's location. What was that? Asked Bakugo, looking over behind to see the other villains appearing. Apologies, Bakugo, said All for One, looking over to his disciple Shigaraki behind a concrete wall. Was for U.A students, Tenya, Iida, Momo Yaozu, Ijiru Kirishima, and Okako Uraraka. Kirishima had made a plan to rescue Bakugo along with the help of his classmates. How do we save him? Asked Uraraka. Indeed, it seems rather impossible, Momo added. I have a plan, but we are all going to have to do our part, said Tenya, looking over to his fellow classmates. All right, Kirishima confirmed. You failed again, Tamura, but that's what I'm here for. So you can get back up and try again. This is all for you. All for One explained, extended a hand to his disciple before he was interrupted by All Might. All for One quickly turned around to block All Might's punch. I knew you'd come, here to kill me again, said All for One as he activated his quirks. All for One's arm began to swell up and punched All Might away, shattering multiple buildings in the process. Sheer power versus sheer power, said Midoriya, watching intently as All Might was nowhere to be seen. All Might, shouted Bakugo. He won't die from a love tap like that, explained All for One. Escape from this place, Tamura, and take the boy with you, said All for One, forcefully activating Kurogiri's quirk, who was on the ground unconscious. Shigaraki, we have to leave, while All Might is busy, suggested Compress. Get the pawn, ordered Shigaraki, looking over to Bakugo. Bakugo began to furiously fend off the villains, making sure as to not let Compress grab a hold of him. Midoriya, on the other hand, was calmly observing everything happen before him. He no longer owed the league anything. Shigaraki wanted him dead. There was no reason to stick around. Not anymore. Deku, help us now, Shigaraki shouted, being blasted away by Bakugo at the same time. Bakugo had completely forgotten about Midoriya and his new status of villain. He shot a glance over to his old childhood friend. Okay, Midoriya said, making his way over to Bakugo. Midoriya began to engage Bakugo, but only putting enough effort to seem like he was trying. In reality, Midoriya was letting himself be pushed back and blown away on purpose. You're still so weak, Deku, Bakugo shouted, blasting away Midoriya. This guy, man. Midoriya chuckled, dusting himself off. Alright, let's do this, said Kirishima, getting in position. I'm ready, said Tenya. I am as well, Momo added. Let's do this. I hope it works, Uraraka said softly as to not be heard by the villains. The plan was simple and effective. Uraraka would use her zero-gravity on Tenya and Kirishima as to reach maximum speed. Kirishima would be a barrier to break through the concrete wall, and Momo would make a small ramp and set it up beforehand while the villains were distracted. Alright, you guys can do this. Please be careful, said Uraraka, making her way back into the city. Momo made the ramp and set it up in front of the concrete wall when the villains were busy trying to catch Bakugo. Good luck, you two, whispered Momo as she quickly followed Uraraka. Alright. Reciparo, burst, shouted Tenya, igniting his engines and smashing through the wall with Kirishima as a battering ram and using the ramp to get an insane amount of height thanks to Uraraka's quirk. A loud smash could be heard and everyone turned to see two boys in midair. Come, shouted Kirishima, holding out his hand towards Bakugo. Bakugo saw his chance and used his quirk to blast himself towards Tenya and Kirishima. Are you guys idiots? Bakugo said with a sneer as he grabbed Kirishima's hand. Spinner, come here quickly. You two, Compress, said Magn, signaling them over to her. Magn acted quickly to propel Compress towards the trio in the sky when he was stopped by a pro hero able to grow extremely tall. Get out of here, you brats, said Mount Lady as she fell to the ground with a loud crash. All Might and All for One were still in their heated battle, exchanging blows which caused the whole city to rumble. However, now that Bakugo was gone, All Might could let loose. Midoriya, I'm sorry, but I can't hold back. I must stop this man here and now, thought All Might as he looked over to Midoriya and then to All for One. We can still catch them. One more shot, said Magn before she was knocked out by Gran Torino. Gran Torino knocked out twice and Spinner quickly after. Midoriya, Tamura and Toga were the only ones left conscious in the fight. All for One activated Magn's quirk to push them into the warp gate. Wait, sensei. With that body you'll, said Shigaraki as he was engulfed by the mist. Continue the fight, Tamura. All for One said as he turned to face All Might. Midoriya and the rest of the league were soon being pushed into the portal. Gran Torino, however, saw his chance. With all the villains being occupied, he quickly took a deep breath and used his jets at max force to propel himself toward Midoriya, grabbing him in midair. Midoriya didn't struggle or fight back, he simply let himself be taken to the police by the hero. You're coming with me, said Gran Torino, using his quirk to make his way through the streets and towards the police. You're quite nimble, aren't you, old-timer? Midoriya said nonchalantly as he was being pulled by his collar. Hey, can you do me a favor, hero? Midoriya asked the Gran Torino. I don't think you deserve one villain. Gran Torino responded harshly. Maybe you're right, but I'll ask you regardless. Can you please tell the police not to release my name to the public, said Midoriya solemnly. Why are you so adamant on that, kid? Asked Gran Torino, slowing down his jets. I worked with the League. I kept my name a secret, not for my sake but for my mother's. If they find out my name, I have no doubt Shigaraki will come after my family. Midoriya explained. Oh, I see. Well, I'll see what I can do, Gran Torino responded. Midoriya and Gran Torino soon arrived with the police and Midoriya was arrested. Take him to the station and wait for Namasa, Gran Torino explained as he made his way back to All Might. It's over. I wonder what Stain is doing, said Midoriya in a low voice, looking out the police car window. Midoriya was transferred to the police station where he was processed and put in a jail cell. The police confiscated all of Midoriya's weapons and gadgets, along with his costume. Midoriya was given an orange jumpsuit. The fight between All Might and All for One had long ended, but the replay was showing in the police station TV. Midoriya had a clear view from his cell. Look at All Might, standing tall after all that. Amazing, mentioned a police officer reading a donut. So All for One lost, huh? No surprise there. His body was far too fragile, said Midoriya in low voice, watching as All Might struggled to stay standing. Midoriya was not told much aside from his rights, and his interrogation he would be receiving the next morning. Midoriya lay down and fell to sleep instantly. He was tired of everything. Chapter 10. At the police station, 10 a.m. Midoriya was patiently waiting for his interview with Namasa. Midoriya was somewhat impatient. He wasn't allowed visits from anyone until his interrogation was finished. Midoriya wanted to see his mother Midoriya. The sound of rattling keys caught Midoriya's attention. "All right, against the wall, arms behind your back," said the police officer, pulling out his handcuffs. Midoriya did as he was instructed and let the policeman cuff him and guide him out of his cell. The policeman took Midoriya into a soundproof room with a single bolted-down table and one chair on both sides. "All right, sit here and put your hands on the table," commanded the officer, pointing towards the chair. Midoriya didn't say a word and sat down on the chair, setting his cuffed hands on the table. Afterward, the policeman connected Midoriya cuffs to the table, so he couldn't pull anything. "The detective will be here soon," said the policeman, coldly locking the door behind him as he left. "About time," sighed Midoriya, looking down at his restrained wrists. 20 minutes later the metal door slowly opened, revealing a single detective. "Good morning, Namasa," Midoriya greeted as he bowed his head. "Good morning, Izuku." "Midoriya, or should I say Deku," Namasa responded, taking a seat across from Midoriya. "Whichever is fine, as long as my name is not made public," Midoriya stated firmly. "Very well," Namasa said, taking a mental note on Midoriya's request. "You know, I knew if anyone would figure me out, it would be you," Midoriya said, sitting upright in his chair. "How so?" asked Namasa. "Your visits with my mom. You're no idiot either, so it was only a matter of time until you pieced it all together," explained Midoriya. "So you kept an eye on your mother," said Namasa, probing Midoriya. "Of course, if anything were to happen to her because of me, I wouldn't be able to live with myself," Midoriya replied solemnly. "I see. Well, Midoriya, I'm going to ask you some questions. I hope you will cooperate with me," Namasa said, taking out his notepad. "Of course, ask away, Detective," Midoriya replied, shifting in his chair. "Midoriya, when did you join the League?" asked Namasa, activating his quirk, lie detector, the ability to tell if an individual is lying. "I would say around 2 months, give or take. I haven't been with them long," Midoriya replied. "I see. And before you joined the League, can you tell me about your whereabouts during that time?" Namasa asked, looking at his notes on Stain. "I trained under Stain, the hero killer, for a little over a year. He taught me how to fight and defend myself, how to be something more than a quirkless and timid child. However, after some time he suggested I join the League. We parted ways not long after," Midoriya explained, fidgeting with his cuffs. They were on fairly tight. "Do you know Stain's current whereabouts now?" asked Namasa. "No, Stain keeps to himself for the most part," replied Midoriya quickly. Namasa was using his quirk. Everything Midoriya was saying was true. It surprised Namasa that Midoriya was being so cooperative. "I'm not lying. Besides, with that quirk of yours it seems like a waste of time if I tried to lie." "Haha," Midoriya chuckled. Namasa was caught off guard. Midoriya knew of his quirk, as Namasa tried to keep it a secret. "I'm surprised you know of my quirk," Namasa replied with a surprised tone. "Of course I do. I know the quirks of nearly everybody in Japan," Midoriya replied. "Is that the work you were assigned to in the League?" Namasa asked curiously. "Yes, I recorded quirks and presented them to the League. I was also an on and off field agent, mostly off, but you get the idea," Midoriya replied, looking down at his cuffs. "You were present at the assault on Iida in the summer camp, correct?" asked Namasa, looking at Midoriya with a serious face. "Yes, that's correct. I was present on both occasions. I have been undercover multiple times, however, and as for the summer camp raid, things didn't go as planned," Midoriya explained. "Please elaborate." "Midoriya, how many times were you undercover, and please tell me what happened at the camp? Why didn't things go as planned?" Namasa asked, writing down everything Midoriya was saying. "I was undercover during the Iida entrance exam. Don't worry, I didn't do anything to the students. I simply took the exam to test myself. I was under the name Akeguro Hero," Midoriya explained. Namasa was surprised to hear Midoriya was Hero, but the detective very well what Midoriya was capable of. Midoriya took a short pause and continued. "The other 2 times were unintentional. I was to record students' quirks for the League and I took a photo with the students of 1A. The other time was at the mall. I interacted with a couple students of Class 1A for a few minutes," Midoriya explained to the detective, who was busy writing down in his notepad. Things never go as planned. This much I have learned from the leak. I was assigned back up along with a villain who went by the alias Muscular. Shigaraki was not fond of my involvement in the league and ordered Muscular to kill me. I defeated Muscular and regrouped with the squad shortly after. Midoriya said, not mentioning Kota Muscular. A bloodthirsty villain, and yet you managed to take him down. He was apprehended and sent to jail. He's looking at life or the death sentence, you know. Namasa replied, looking up from his notepad. Good. Scum like him are waste of space on this earth. Midoriya replied with a cold expression. Midoriya, I'm going to ask you 3 more questions. Please answer truthfully. Namasa said, tightening his grasp on his notepad. Before Namasa could ask his question, he glanced over to Midoriya's wrists. They were tightly secured, maybe even too much. Namasa stood up and released Midoriya from his cuffs. Thank you. They were rather tight, Midoriya said, massaging his wrists. Not a problem. Are you ready to answer, Midoriya? Namasa asked, moving the cuffs to the side. Of course, Detective. Midoriya replied, setting both of his hands on the table. Midoriya, how many students have you injured? Namasa asked in a somewhat nervous tone. Namasa was afraid of this question. If Midoriya assaulted the students with a knife or a deadly weapon, it was possible he would be seen up to 15 years in prison. I have only attacked 2 students. I engaged in hand-to-hand combat with Bakugo Katsuki and Kirishima Jiro. Midoriya responded calmly. I see. Namasa sighed in relief. Midoriya, do you know anything about the Nomu? Namasa asked firmly. I know they are creatures pumped with multiple quirks. That is all I know about them. All for one made sure to keep everyone in the dark. Midoriya explained, not mentioning the personal Nomu he requested long ago. I understand. Thank you for being honest on that one. Namasa said, flipping through his notes. Midoriya, Gran Torino said you didn't put up a fight when he apprehended you. Why is that? Asked Namasa curiously. I was done with it all. My life was under constant threat by everyone. I just wanted it to end. And I wanted to see my mother again. Midoriya explained with a sigh. Oh. Namasa replied with a sigh of his own. There was a short pause in the room. Midoriya, why? Why did you become a villain? Namasa asked, looking straight at Midoriya. Why, That's a good one. I'm not sure myself, Detective, but I'll tell you about myself. Hopefully that will shed some light. I was just a child. And like any other child, I was full of hopes and dreams. My dream, however, was to become a hero, and not just any hero. A great one like All Might, a hero who could save anyone with a smile. My dream, however, would not become a reality. I was quirkless. My only true friend became my tormentor, bullying me for being quirkless. But I powered through it all, the abuse and neglect. Deep down I wanted to believe I could be a hero. Prove them all wrong and show them a timid quirkless boy could become a hero if he tried hard enough. My string of hope was thin, and then All Might appeared, my chance to know if it was possible. I asked All Might, my idol, if I could become a hero. However, I learned 2 things that day. Hopes and dreams are only hopes and dreams, and life isn't like the stories or movies. It's a cruel and dangerous place. The string I held for all of those years finally snapped that day. I simply couldn't deal with it anymore, so later that day I returned to the same place. My dreams were shattered. And jumped. Midoriya said solemnly whilst clenching his fists. Stain took me under his wing, and I became the very thing I swore to defeat. I became a villain, and not because I wanted to, but because I had nowhere else to go. Midoriya explained. Midoriya. Namasa said in a low voice. Midoriya didn't respond and stared at his scarred and beaten hands. Thank you, Midoriya, that's all I had, Namasa said, standing up from his seat and heading towards the door. Detective. Looking back, my life has been nothing but failure. It's funny how things turn out, Midoriya said, still looking at his hands. Namasa didn't say a word and walked out of the room. On the other side of the double-sided window stood Toshinori, and Midoriya's mother Inko was crying at the sight of her son. He was nothing like the boy she remembered. Midoriya now was an emotionless boy with no ambition or hope. He was now an empty vessel full of regret. Toshinori's blood was cold. He blamed himself for the current state Midoriya was in. Pathetic, I'm pathetic. Toshinori said in a low voice to himself. Toshinori took the slap from Inko without retaliation. You, if only you, had just said something else. Inko shouted at the blonde skeletal man. Toshinori stood silent and stared at the floor. Mum, please calm down, Namasa said, walking quickly up to Inko. I know it's not his fault. I should have known sooner. I should have done something. Inko choked, falling to her knees. Namasa, what do? We can't let him rot in jail, Toshinori asked, which was very uncommon of him. I have a risky idea, but it's worth a shot, Namasa said, lifting up Inko from the floor. Mum, whenever you're ready to talk to Midoriya, just tell me, Namasa added, looking back at Midoriya, who was staring blankly into space. 1 hour later, the door to the interrogation room opened and Inko walked in. Mom. Midoriya choked as he looked at his mother. Izuku, Inko said as she hugged her child warmly. I'm sorry, it's my fault you are going through all of this, Midoriya said, scolding himself. No, sweetie, it's my fault for not doing anything sooner. I should have done something, Inko responded quickly, hugging her son tighter. No. That's not it, you gave me all the love in the world. I was just selfish and weak, Midoriya said, letting go of his mother. Izuku. Inko responded, in a low voice, I'm sorry I couldn't return home, it was far too dangerous. Midoriya explained to his mother. I know, Izuku, but I'm glad we can see each other again, Inko said as tears began to fill up her eyes. Me too, Midoriya said as he finally shed a single tear. The next day at Iida, the teachers of Iida were meeting with Namasa at his request. So detective, what is it you wanted to speak to us about? Nezu asked cheerfully. It was in regards to the villain Deku. I request you put him in the hero course. Namasa said firmly to the teachers. I don't think so, detective. He's a villain and as such should be treated as one. Vlad King stated loudly. I'm with Vlad on this one. President Mick added, slumping back into his chair. Please let me explain before you make your decision, Namasa said, bringing in 4 people who were waiting outside the waiting room. Deku, the villain, as we all know, is a villain, however his heroic deeds far outweigh his wrongdoings. Allow me to present you the people he has saved. Namasa explained, signaling the 4 people to come inside the room. The group of 4 consisted of Tenya, Iida, Tsukauchi, Kota Izuma, and a random man. I'm going to let them each tell you their story, Namasa said, standing off to the side, allowing the 4 to stand in front of the room. Hello, I am Tsukauchi of Class 1A. Asui said, bowing in respect to the teachers. Hello, Miss Asui, please continue. Nezu said with a smile. Deku, the villain, I don't know much about him, but I don't think he's a bad person. I was with Mineta when the villains attacked the school. I was hiding when I was spotted by Deku. He could have told his allies, but instead, he told me to run, warning me of his leader and what he would do to us if we stuck around. If it wasn't for him, I don't know if I would be here now, explained Asui as she shuddered at the thought of death. After Asui finished, Tenya soon followed. Deku. He taught me what it meant to be a true hero. And he is also the person who saved my life. I was blinded by revenge, and I made the decision to pursue the hero killer in Hazu. Little did I know how suicidal it was at the time. I was quickly overpowered by the hero killer and he was prepared to take my life. Deku stepped in, however, and convinced hero killer to spare my life. However, I know if it had come to it, Deku would have fought the hero killer to protect me. Tenya explained, facing directly at the teachers. I see, thank you, Tenya. Nezu said in a soft voice. When I caught wind that they caught this villain, I felt like I had to thank him in person. Although I don't know his real name, I'm grateful for what he did. Like most, I was on my way to work, but I was assaulted by a large person. They beat me down and left me to die. Deku didn't, however. He cleaned my wounds and treated me before calling the paramedics. I'm glad I was able to see his face before passing out, explained the man to everyone present. The room went silent. The teachers were still not convinced, however they were beginning to see the good in the villain. Hi, my name is Kota Izumi. Kota said shyly to the room. Hello there, Kota. Please don't be afraid, you're not going to be criticized, I promise. Nezu said with a soft smile. Oh, okay. Deku saved me from the man who killed my mom and dad, Kota said, tearing up. I always sit alone on a cliff, And Muscular the villain, he wanted to kill me just for fun. But Deku stepped in and defeated Muscular, and he made sure I was safe even when he was fighting that guy. Deku was bleeding all over, coughing up blood and limping, but he still let me ride on his back. He took me to my aunt, making sure I was safe. He might be a villain, but he's my hero, Kota said loudly with tears in his eyes. The room grew silent. Everyone in the room was surprised to hear a villain did such a thing. Thank you, Kota, Namasa said. Namasa soon led the group outside of the room and quickly made his way back. Now that you have heard these stories, please tell me what you all think, Namasa asked, standing at the front of the room. He seems much more suited to be a hero, that's for sure, Nezu added, looking at the other teachers. I believe with proper guidance he can become a great hero, All Might said firmly, surprising everyone in the room. Just because he's some sanity doesn't make him any better than the other villains, but he does have some redeeming qualities, Vlad King said bluntly. Now that the kid has some support and witnesses, I think we could squeeze him in, President Mick added enthusiastically. The other teachers murmured amongst themselves, except Aizawa, who seemed rather annoyed. You would all let a villain enter the hero course but not a student of your own school? It's simply ridiculous, Aizawa said somewhat angrily. The room grew silent and many teachers nodded in agreement with Aizawa's reasoning. Detective, we see the good in this villain, but we simply cannot deny our own students the hero course to a villain who has no interest in becoming a hero, Nezu said firmly, showing a hint of sadness. I see. Well, I thank you all for your time, Namasa said, gathering his evidence and heading towards the door. Namasa was 1 foot out the door when he was interrupted by Nezu. Wait. I think I have an idea. It's not what you requested, but it's next best thing, Nezu said with a bright smile. 3 days later, U.A was finishing up the last of the students for the boarding school program. The parents all had agreed to allow their children to live at U.A for their safety. Namasa was busy trying to convince someone of his own. Hello, Midoriya, Namasa greeted through the jail phone. Hello again, Detective, Midoriya greeted back, bowing his head slightly in respect. Midoriya, I'm sure you know why I'm here, Namasa said, looking straight at the teen. Yes, the boarding program at U.A. I'm sure you know my answer, Midoriya replied in a disinterested tone. Listen, Detective, whatever you say won't change my mind. The idea is stupid and would only cause problems for me and you, Midoriya added. Midoriya, you have 2 years in jail for assault. This could be your chance to get out of here, Namasa said, trying his best to reason with Midoriya. Detective, I deserve to be locked up, and I'm sure I won't be allowed to roam free at U.A either, Midoriya argued as he looked straight at the detective. Maybe you're right, but I have someone here who wants to tell you something, Namasa said as he signaled Inko to take the phone. Izuku, I am glad you're okay, Inko said with a smile. Yeah, I'm okay. Did the detective put you up to this? Midoriya asked his mother. Well, yes and no. He only asked if I agreed with his suggestion and if it was possible for me to try and convince you. He did not force me or anything, Inko explained. That's good to hear, but I really don't think this is a good idea, Midoriya replied. I think it would be much better to be around people your age and not here with these very old men. Plus they said I could visit any time if you went to Inko said happily. Midoriya let out a long sigh and spoke. Fine, but I'm doing it for you, not for them, Midoriya said, giving into his mother's smile. Inko smiled brightly and passed the phone to Namasa. So you'll do it, Midoriya? Namasa asked once more. Yes, I'll do it, but just know this, Detective, if my mother gets hurt in any of this you will regret it, Midoriya said coldly, hanging up the phone and going back to his cell. Namasa shivered at Midoriya's words, but he finally convinced Midoriya to go through with his plan. Chapter 11. At the Midoriya household. 8 a.m. Inko was preparing some tea for her awaited guests. Ding dong. Inko quickly made her way to the door to reveal Namasa and All Might. Good morning, Mum, Namasa greeted, hanging his hat on the rack. Good morning, Madam, All Might said as he bowed. Good morning, you too, Inko said with a smile. Inko had done a complete 180. She was no longer depressed or anxious. Now she was full of life and happy for her son's future. Mrs. Midoriya, I would like to apologize. I am deeply sorry for what I have done, All Might said as he got on his knees and put his forehead on the ground asking for forgiveness. Oh. Please, you don't have to do that. I'm glad Izuku is safe and sound, and that he has been given a second chance. This is all I could ever ask for, so please get up. Inko said as she extended her arm towards All Might. Thank you. I will guide young Midoriya to the best of my ability, All Might said as he received Inko's hand. Well, ma'am, I'm sure you know why we are here, Namasa said with a smile. Ah, yes, his things, Inko said with a little skip in her step. Izuku said he only wanted one thing from his room. Please come this way, Inko said as she led the two men to Midoriya's room. Inko slowly opened the door to reveal Midoriya's room. The room was littered with All Might memorabilia and everything related to All Might. All Might felt a stab of guilt in his chest. The guilt seemed to never for him when it came to Midoriya. This much. He looked up to me this much, empathetic All Might said in a low voice as he picked up an All Might figurine. Izuku said he wanted his notebooks. He said they were hidden somewhere in the hole in his bed. Inko said as she looked underneath the bed. Inko quickly found the hole in the bed and pulled out multiple notebooks. Ah, here they are. He said this was all he wanted. He told me I could give all the All Might toys and posters to kids in need. Inko said, handing the notebooks to Namasa. How thoughtful of him, Namasa said as he peeked into the notebooks. Wow, these notes are amazing, Namasa said as he skimmed the notebooks and put them in a bag All Might was still taking in Midoriya's room. And all the posters. Midoriya even had posters only die-hard fans could have. Tashi. Namasa said as he put his hand on the blonde man's shoulder. Huh? Oh, of course, let us go, All Might said, snapping out of his haze and walking back to the living room. Will Izuku be okay? I'm glad he's been given another chance, but I can't afford to lose him again. Inko said sadly. I promise he will be okay. All Might said, turning into his muscle form before reverting back into his skeletal form. Yes, we will all be keeping a close eye, don't you worry, Mum. Namasa said as he picked up his hat from the door. Thank you, Inko said with a smile as she waved both of the men goodbye. This is important, so listen up, Aizawa said loudly, grabbing the students' attention. They were all standing in front of the U.A dorms waiting to go inside. Yaozu, Tenya, Uraraka, Kirishima. On that night you four went to go save Bakugo, Aizawa stated as he looked at four students he mentioned. Judging by a couple of your faces, I can tell you all knew full well that they intended to do so. Had All Might not been forced to retire, save Hakagure, Jiro, and Bakugo, you would all be expelled. You betrayed our trust, those who went and those who knew of the plan, so you better start rebuilding our trust through the proper channels. Aizawa said. Aizawa spoke briefly about receiving provisional licenses afterward. We will speak more on your provisional licenses tomorrow. Please meet in class 1A. After that you can all go to your rooms and rest up, Aizawa said as he walked up the steps. The students quickly followed Aizawa into the large building. Aizawa was waiting patiently in the room when a horde of students came pouring in. The students all took their seats and waited for Aizawa to start the class. I brought you all here to the classroom because I have to introduce you all to someone, Aizawa said as he signaled someone over to the front. The door to the classroom slowly opened to reveal a well-dressed black-haired teen coming into the room. This is Izuku Midoriya. He will be teaching here at UA. The podium's yours, Aizawa said as he got into his cocoon sleeping bag and let Midoriya take the podium. Flashback. He could teach our students, Nezu suggested as he turned to face Namasa. Many teachers almost jumped out of their seats at the suggestion. Principal Nezu, Namasa said as he looked over to Nezu. Principal, you can't be serious, Vlad King said facing Nezu. I'm very serious, Nezu said firmly. It seems the villains are more prepared to attack our unsuspecting students each day. I believe Deku could provide our students with the knowledge to fight against this. Deku has been a villain himself. He knows how the villains think more than any of us in this room. Nezu explained to the teachers. He harmed 2 students. Who's to say he won't do the same thing again? Midnight asked. Actually, I recently found out the 2 students who were attacked by Deku were healed by him right after their battle. Deku is also not fond of murder or pointless violence. Namasa added. Many teachers nodded slightly at the sound of that. Nezu is right about one thing. Our students are not prepared to face villains at all. They are not aware how insane and dangerous some of these guys are. Aizawa said, applying some eye drops to his dead eyes. You know what, I'm sold. I say we let him in, he sounds groovy. President Mick added loudly, yes, I too agree with Principal Nezu's suggestion. The sooner our students are prepared the better. I cannot bear to go through one of the students being kidnapped again. All Might said firmly. If All Might thinks this boy can prepare our students for the future, so do I. Midnight added, all right, let's take a vote. All those in favor of allowing Izuku Midoriya aka Deku to teach the students of air, raise your hand, asked Nezu loudly. Nezu, All Might, President Mick, and Midnight raised their hands first. Cementos and Ectoplasm raised their hands not long after. The only teachers left were Aizawa, Vladking, and 13. I suppose he is quite knowledgeable, 13 said slowly, raising her hand with that Midoriya was in. However, one more hand went up before Nezu could say anything. Just know I'll be keeping a close eye on him, Aizawa said as he raised his hand. That's the spirit, Eraserhead. President Mick said loudly, using his chair's wheels to glide over to Aizawa. Aizawa simply rolled his eyes in response. Vladking still had his hand down, but he was beginning to think the idea wasn't a bad one. All right, that settles it. Midoriya will teach the hero course students starting the coming week, Nezu said, stamping Namasa's request. Namasa was overjoyed he got Midoriya into U.A one way or another, but there was still one more thing he had to discuss. There is one more thing I must tell you all, Namasa said, looking at the teachers and then to Nezu. Of course, Detective, Nezu said gladly. It involves the student Bakugo Katsuki, Namasa stated. Did something happen to him? Cementos asked. Well, as you all know, Deku is the same age as our students. Did not cross your minds at all how someone so young became a villain? Namasa asked the teachers. Now that you're pointing it out, it is strange to see someone that young become a villain. Midnight added, well, truth be told, Midoriya never intended to become a villain. In fact, Midoriya wanted to be a hero. He was unfortunately born quirkless. However, Bakugo was Midoriya's tormentor most of his life. He bullied and harassed him for being inferior, Namasa said solemnly. Namasa then proceeded to tell the students of Midoriya's life and his past, why Midoriya was who he was today. So one of our students did such a thing, Nezu said angrily. With a hint of sadness, the rest of teachers including Aizawa were silent after hearing about Midoriya and his past. This will not go unpunished. I will speak to him, Nezu said firmly. I have some things to say to him too, Aizawa added angrily. Flashback, and Midoriya was wearing a white dress shirt with a black vest and black tie. He wore formal dress shoes and black pants. Hello Class 1A, my name is Izuku Midoriya. I will be teaching you about the villains you will face in the world. I hope we can all get along. Thank you for having me, Midoriya said in a dead tone as he bowed towards the class, just like Aizawa. They all deadpanned in unison. Deku? Bakugo thought angrily as one eye twitched slightly. A couple students in the room recognized Midoriya almost instantly. Hey, that's Mina, Okako, and Kirishima said together. Tenya. Iida shot his hand up, waiting for Midoriya to call on him. Ah, yes, Tenya. Iida, I'm glad you're doing well. What is your question? Midoriya said as he looked at Tenya with a short smile. The classroom all shot a glance at Tenya and then to Midoriya. It seemed as if they knew each other. Why are you here? Why did you save me back then, even though you're a villain? Tenya asked, standing up from his seat. A villain? Are you serious? Said some of the students, looking over at Midoriya. I'm going to teach you all, can't you tell? Midoriya said with a low chuckle as he pulled slightly on his vest. As for your second question, maybe I saw your potential to become a true hero, or maybe I just didn't want to see someone so young die that day, Midoriya said, wiping away his smile. Midoriya will be teaching you all how to fight against villains and teach the different types you will encounter as a hero, so you better pay attention. Aizawa piped up as he took a sip from his protein bag. Bakugo could no longer contain his anger and snapped. Deku, you shit! Bakugo shouted angrily as he jumped out of his desk, dashed towards Midoriya. Aizawa quickly shot up from his sleeping bag and binded Bakugo. Bakugo settled down. Aizawa commanded angrily, "Good to see you too, Bakugo," Midoriya said, looking at the blonde-haired boy, containing his subtle grudge against him. Bakugo flinched slightly at Midoriya referring to him so formally. "I know you two have history, but try to keep it under control. Now go back to your seat," Aizawa said angrily as he released Bakugo from his bindings. "You two know each other?" Yoraraku whispered to Bakugo, who sat down. "Shut it," Bakugo shot back, glaring at Midoriya. "Is that all, Aizawa?" Midoriya said, glancing over to the man. "Yes, you can go now. That goes for all you two, except you, Bakugo. I need to speak with you in private," Aizawa said, dismissing everyone. Midoriya simply walked out of the classroom into his dorm room. He was assigned a student dorm, however his room was at the end of the hall next to Todoroki Shito. All the students were following Midoriya while keeping their distance. Until Tenya caught up to Midoriya and caught his attention. "Midoriya-sensei," Tenya said loudly, catching the black-haired boy's attention. Midoriya turned around and faced Tenya and all the students behind him. "There's no need for that, just Midoriya is fine," Midoriya said, looking at Tenya. "Thank you for everything," Tenya said loudly as he quickly bowed towards Midoriya, thanking him for everything. Midoriya was not used to praise, so he wasn't sure how to react. "No problem, just don't go off and do something so stupid again," Midoriya said as he turned to go to his room. The students all followed until he shut the door to his room. After that they all dispersed and hung out in the huge living room. Aizawa was speaking to Bakugo about Midoriya and his situation. "You're part of the reason this guy is a villain," Aizawa stated coldly. Bakugo was silent. He didn't know Midoriya had turned into a villain because of his words. Nobody ever told him anything about bullying Midoriya. In fact, the other kids and teachers joined in too most of the time. He never saw anything wrong with it. "Those teachers should be fired for what they did. If it was up to me, you would be expelled here and now, but the principal is such a forgiving guy, he's given you another chance," Aizawa explained coldly. Bakugo was still silent. He was processing everything. "Go to his office tomorrow, Bakugo, that is all I have to say to you," Aizawa said as he made his way into the hallway. Bakugo stood alone in the room. He gripped the door handle, causing many explosions. "Deku, you're ruining everything," Bakugo said angrily as he flung the door open and made his way to his room. Later that day the students had just finished setting up their rooms and were all having fun in the living room, all except Sasui and Bakugo Katsuki. Kirishima asked the question that was on all of their minds. "So what do you guys think about Midoriya?" Kirishima asked the students. "This too is on my mind. I have immense respect for him, but I would like to know what you all think as well," Tenya said as he violently did his usual karate chop arm motion. "I think the fact that he's a villain kinda puts me on edge," Kaminari said with a low chuckle. "Yay, what if he kills one of us?" Mineta said quickly. "Do you know what quirk he even has?" Jiro asked Tenya. "I'm not sure myself. Maybe he will go over it in class," Tenya replied quickly. "Well, he's nothing like how we met him at the mall. He wasn't happy and fun at all." Mina pouted. "Yay, it's a bit unsettling that he can change his expression so drastically." Kirishima said, "He seems really sad." Yoraraku said, shifting slightly in the couch. "Yeah, I noticed that too. He also seemed super bored." Sero added quickly, "As long as he doesn't try anything I don't care." Todoroki said in a low cold voice. The room grew silent for a bit when Mina broke the silence. "Hey guys, so me and the girls were thinking, why don't we have a competition to show off our rooms?" Mina said happily. Midoriya was working on his lesson plan for the week when he decided to go downstairs and get some tea. Midoriya went downstairs and passed the students in the living room to make himself a cup of tea. They were all in their pajamas and indoor clothing. Midoriya was still in his formal attire still. The low sound of whispering students could be heard. "How long are you all going to stare?" Midoriya asked, taking a sip of tea and turning around. A lot of the students jumped after being discovered by Midoriya. Mina, however, was unaffected and nervously made her way over to Midoriya. "Hey we were going to show off our rooms and we wanted to know if you wanted to come." Mina said happily. "I'm sorry Miss Ashido, I have to prepare my lesson plan for the week," Midoriya responded, setting down his teacup. "Oh, it's okay, don't worry about it," Mina responded with a solemn smile. "Very well, if that is all, I'll be off to my room. Midoriya said. Midoriya quickly washed his cup and went upstairs to his room. The students all began to whisper again about their new teacher. I wanted to get to know him more. Mina pouted. He has piqued my interest as well. He seems dark, Tokoyami added, looking up at the ceiling. Well, what are we waiting for? Let's all go and see some rooms. Mina shouted with glee. The night went by rather fast and all the students went to bed not long after their small room competition. The next morning 6:30 a.m. Bakugo was in the principal's office at Nezu's request. I'm sure you know why you're here, Bakugo. Nezu said, breaking the silence in the room. Yes sir. Bakugo responded somewhat angrily. Bakugo was hot-headed and crude, but he understood his place when it came to Principal Nezu. Your old friend Midoriya, I understand you tormented him in the past. Nezu said bluntly, getting straight to the point. Why is he teaching at a... Bakugo asked loudly, dodging the question. Midoriya will be teaching the students at U.A. how to better understand the villains in this society. Nezu responded quickly. Now answer the question, did you or did you not bully Midoriya? Nezu said, raising his voice. Yeah, I did some stuff. Bakugo said, his voice somewhat shaky. I see. Bakugo, I have decided not to expel you for this horrible action, but in turn I expect a formal apology from you to Midoriya. Nezu explained to Bakugo. What, you want me to apologize to Deku? A villain? Bakugo retorted angrily. This is not up for debate. Bakugo, apologize to Midoriya or you will be expelled. Nezu said, narrowing his eyes. Bakugo shuddered a bit at the sight of Nezu being so serious. Yes sir. Bakugo said, a low voice. Very well, you can go to class now. Nezu said as he turned to face the paperwork on his desk. Bakugo left the room and made his way to class 1A in time. Bakugo, you will know that Midoriya almost took his life because of you. But for now, take the first step at redemption. Nezu said in a low voice as he watched the blonde teen walk slowly in the hallway. In Class 1A, as I told you all yesterday, our first priority is to acquire provisional licenses. Hero licenses are a serious responsibility. They are directly concerned with matters of life and death. As such, the exam to receive qualification is very hard. Even the average yearly passing for just the provisional license exam is only about 50%. Aizawa explained to the class. It's that hard just for a provisional license? Mineta asked loudly. So starting today each one of you will be devising at least 2 super moves. Aizawa said, signaling for teachers, and the students all cheered in joy at the sound of super moves. Semendos, Midnight, Ectoplasm, and Midoriya each walked into the room. Midoriya was not in costume as the other teachers. His costume was still being revised by police and other costume companies. Midoriya instead was dressed in his vest and tie for the day. Some of the students whispered amongst themselves about Midoriya. Aizawa and some of the teachers then went on to explain the importance of super moves and all its possible uses. Alright, change into your costumes and assemble in Gamut Gym. Aizawa said at the Gamut Gym. The teachers and Midoriya were all waiting for the students to arrive. I will make training dummies for the students, Ectoplasm said to the group, and I will make the terrain. Cementos added, the rest of us will focus on helping the students create their super moves. Aizawa said as he looked over at Midnight and Midoriya. Speaking of, here are some notes I devised for every single student in this class. Midoriya said as he handed each of the teachers a packet full of improvements and possible uses for each of the students' works. These are amazing, Ectoplasm said, flipping through the packet. Wow, these are full of great ideas. Cementos added happily. Thank you, Midoriya, this will make things a bit easier, Aizawa said as he put the packet on his clipboard. Not long after, the students all began to pour into the gym. Cementos and Ectoplasm soon set up the gym and let the students begin their training. Midoriya was taking notes on all the students when the door behind him opened. Happy to see everyone going at it. All Might said, for although I wasn't asked to come, I didn't have anything else to do, so I am here. All Might said, switching into his muscle form briefly. Midoriya turned to look at All Might and then directed his attention to the students. Midoriya was taking more detailed notes on each of them. A loud explosion could be heard in the gym. Bakugo Katsuki, an overly aggressive fighting style, Midoriya mumbled in a low voice as he began to write furiously in his notebook. All Might made his way over next to Midoriya, who was sucked into his notes. "Young Midoriya, how is Class 1A treating you?" All Might asked. There was a short pause and Midoriya rose his head from his notebook and spoke. "It is the first day and my class doesn't start until tomorrow, so I am not sure yet." Midoriya replied quickly. All Might got the vibe that Midoriya was not in the mood to talk. "Of course. Well, I will see you later," All Might said as he made his way back to Midnight and the others. "Don't force it, All Might," Aizawa said as he looked over to Midoriya. "Yes, you're right. I must focus my attention on the students," All Might said as he made his way over to Kirishima. All Might was giving all the students a bit of advice and tips. "Teaching for dummies," Aizawa and Midoriya said in unison as they spotted the book in All Might's back pocket. The next day in Class 1A, Midoriya was going to finally have his first official class as a teacher. Unlike the other students in the class, Midoriya was not nervous at all. Aizawa stepped off the podium, allowing Midoriya to take the front. Midoriya was to remain under Aizawa's supervision when he was teaching the students. "Good morning, class," Midoriya greeted with his cold dead eyes. "Good morning," replied the students nervously. "I am going to get right to it. This is villain training and I will be teaching you all about the different types of villains you will meet in the world. Make sure to pay close attention. You don't want to be caught unprepared or dead," Midoriya explained bluntly to the students. Momo raised her hand slowly. "Question Yarazu?" Midoriya asked, looking over to Momo. "Yes. How will we be graded?" Momo asked shyly. "You will be graded on your ability to remember and handle certain situations in and out of practical training," Midoriya replied quickly. "Practical training?" murmured some of the students. "Yes. In fact, I want you all to meet me in Gamut Gym. Wear your hero costumes as you will all be working on your super moves afterward," Midoriya said as he grabbed his stack of papers and headed into the hallway. The students all stood in the room wondering what practical experience could Midoriya possibly teach them. In Gamut Gym the students were all lined up waiting for Midoriya to arrive in the gym. Aizawa was off on the side supervising. "Hey Bakugo, what do you think about the new teacher?" Kirishima asked. "If he wants to fight, I'll crush him," Bakugo replied, booming with confidence. Bakugo was pumped for Midoriya's class in particular. He wanted to give Midoriya a good beating. "I'm still not sure what we are going to learn," Momo said as she looked over to Jiraiya. Shouldn't we be focusing more on our provisional licenses?" Mineta added loudly. The students all agreed with Mineta for once. "Yes. I would rather put my time into working on my super move," Todoroki said bluntly. "What the point of your license and super moves? If you're just going to be found dead in a ditch somewhere," Midoriya said loudly, walking to the center of the gym in his villain costume. Midoriya's costume was unaltered for the most part. The gadgets were all confiscated except for the smoke bombs he had. The students all stared at Midoriya in his costume. It was not heroic looking in the very least. "Now then, today's lesson will be all about action and reaction," Midoriya stated loudly. The students all looked at each other with confused faces, including Bakugo. "There are sorts of villains in this world, but today we will talk about villains whose conviction far exceeds rational thought. This type of villain holds strongly to their beliefs and cannot be convinced or reasoned with. Weak-willed or unexperienced heroes should not engage this villain unless they are absolutely certain they can take them out," Midoriya explained to the group of students. "If the villains try anything, I'll just beat them into the ground," Bakugo shouted loudly, interrupting Midoriya. "Will you now?" Midoriya said, pausing for a moment. "Bakugo, could you please come forward?" Midoriya said, looking over to Bakugo. Bakugo walked towards the front with a mean look in his eye. Midoriya wore a dead and bored expression as usual. Aizawa was vigilant and was prepared to intervene if necessary. "Are you ready, Bakugo?" Midoriya asked him. "Going to fuck you up," Bakugo said, making some small explosions in his palm. Midoriya looked directly at Bakugo and made a small sinister smile. Bakugo was about to dash at Midoriya before he stopped dead in his tracks. "What's wrong, Katsuki?" Midoriya asked in a murderous tone. The room grew cold and everyone stared at Midoriya in horror, including Bakugo. Midoriya's usual demeanor had done a complete 180. Midoriya was now oozing bloodlust and murderous intent towards all the students. Bakugo gulped and took a single step back. "You're all heroes, right?" Midoriya said, looking at the terrified students in the back. "This feeling." Tenya choked, taking a step back. "What the?" Yoraraku said, shuddering at the sight of Midoriya. "Well, what are you waiting for? Come get me, heroes!" Midoriya shouted, taking another step forward. The students were all frozen in horror, along with Bakugo, who was sweating profusely. "Show me what you're made of. Show me your blood!" Midoriya shouted as he took another step forwards. The room grew cold and everyone had their eyes fixated on Midoriya. They all saw death in his eyes. Bakugo and some other students fell backward. They were going to die. Midoriya was going to kill them all, and there was nothing they could do about it. It was as if gravity itself multiplied 10x over their bodies. Aizawa had seen enough. He prepared his bindings and quickly made his way to Midoriya to restrain him. In that moment, however, Midoriya stopped his intent to murder and turned back into his usual self. "You guys can calm down. I'm not going to hurt you. That is all for today. I will teach you how to overcome it, don't worry," Midoriya said, dusting himself off and walking towards Aizawa. The students were dead silent, some students still frozen in fear. Bakugo, however, was in shock at what just occurred. "Are you serious?" Ojiro choked. "I couldn't do anything," Todoroki said as he fell backward and sat down. "That's what we're up against as heroes?" Kirishima said, wiping the sweat off his hands. "I was afraid of Deku?" Bakugo choked in a low voice. He looked down at his shaky hands. "Quite a first lesson. They might be terrified of you now, you know," Aizawa said, looking over to his students. "The world is far more terrifying." Midoriya responded coldly. 2 days later, the students were working on their super moves. Some students were having a bit more trouble than others. "Some of them are having a hard time," Midoriya said to Aizawa, who was also observing the students. "Unfortunately." Aizawa sighed. There was a short pause and only the sound of explosions and students could be heard. "Got nothing better to do?" Midoriya sighed as he walked towards one of the students. Mina was having trouble coming up with a super move despite All Might and Ectoplasm's advice. "And why can't I think of anything?" Mina sighed as she sat down on the floor. Midoriya walked up behind Mina and spoke. "Do you need some help?" Midoriya asked politely. "Ah. You scared me." Mina pouted as she turned to face Midoriya. "And yes, I do need help," Mina said with an embarrassed chuckle. "I'm surprised you aren't afraid of me. The other students seem to be avoiding me," Midoriya said, looking over at the other students. "Well, if you wanted to do anything to us, you would have done it by now. As for the others, they are just nervous since you were a villain and all," Mina explained with a smile. "I see. Well, what are you having trouble with?" Midoriya asked the pink-skinned girl. "Well, just my super move, really. I can't seem to think of anything to do with my quirk." Mina sighed. "Let me check my notes," Midoriya said, pulling out his notebook. Midoriya flipped to the page on Mina's quirk and began to review his notes. Mina was curious as to what Midoriya had written down on her and was on her tippy toes trying to sneak a peek. "Take a look," Midoriya said, handing the notebook to Mina. "Wow, these are cool. You got everyone in here?" Mina said curiously, flipping through the notebook. "Read up on your page, maybe you will find some inspiration," Midoriya said, showing her the bookmark on her. It was pink. "Okay, let's see here," Mina said cheerfully as she began to read the notes Midoriya had on Mina and her quirk. "You wrote down here something to do with my acid solubility and viscosity," Mina said, trying her best to think of something. "Your acid has many uses, you just need to think outside the box," Midoriya explained to Mina. "Oh!" Mina exclaimed. It seemed as if a light bulb went off in her head. "I think I got it. Maybe I can make my acid stronger and make a wall to block stuff," Mina said proudly. "That seems like a good idea. Stick with that and work on it," Midoriya replied. "I will." "Thank you," Mina said cheerfully, handing Midoriya back his notebook. Midoriya retrieved his notebook and began to walk towards another student when a loud explosion caught his attention. "Apshot!" Bakugo shouted as he tested out his new super move. The move worked like a bullet, a straight shot meant to do more damage in a small radius. "Nailed it!" Bakugo exclaimed as he watched the rock break apart. Midoriya quickly grew disinterested and turned back around when he heard Bakugo and Aizawa shout something. "Hey, watch out!" Bakugo yelled, "Idiot, watch out!" Aizawa shouted as he prepared his bindings. Midoriya turned around quickly and saw All Might about to be crushed by the rock Bakugo had just destroyed. All Might was frail in his weakened form. A rock that size could break his spine or, worse. Aizawa was too far to do anything. Midoriya however was the only one close enough to reach him. Midoriya deeply inhaled and exhaled and dashed towards All Might. Mental state vigilance. Everything was moving in slow motion for Midoriya, but to everyone else, he was moving at an inhuman speed. Midoriya reached All Might and pushed him to the side, causing him to fall over. Midoriya however was not going to be able to dodge the rock. Midoriya lifted his arm, preparing himself for the debris. Crash! The concrete slammed into Midoriya and the entire gym grew silent. "Shit," Aizawa said as he began to run towards Midoriya before he suddenly stopped. "That one hurt a bit," Midoriya said as he lifted himself off the floor and dusted himself off like it was nothing. "Young Midoriya, are you okay?" All Might said, rushing up to Midoriya. "I'm fine," Midoriya replied, doing a circle motion stretch with his shoulder. "Because of me you got hurt. Forgive me." All Might apologized, bowing towards Midoriya. "There was no reason for you to die, that's all there is to it," Midoriya replied bluntly and returned to what he was doing. The students were all in awe at what Midoriya had just done and the crazy speed he just demonstrated. "You know, you're pretty nice for a villain," Mina said with a smile as Midoriya walked by. "That's not it. I'm just not sure what to do anymore," Midoriya said in a very low voice as he reflected shortly on his life and quickly proceeded to the next student. Kaminari was a bit slow when it came to most things, and coming up with a super move was no exception. "Hello Kaminari," Midoriya greeted as he walked up to the yellow-haired teen. "Hey man." I mean sensei," Kaminari said, quickly correcting himself. Kaminari was somewhat nervous at Midoriya's presence like the rest of the class, but he was the most sociable one out of all the boys. "Just Midoriya is fine." "So what are you having trouble with?" Midoriya asked the yellow-haired boy. "You see, my quirk is very wild. I can't let loose unless I want to hurt everyone around me." Kaminari sighed. "I see," Midoriya said as he flipped open his notebook to Kaminari's page. Kaminari put his hands in his pocket and kicked at the dust on the floor as he waited for Midoriya. "So what's your strongest move?" Midoriya asked, looking up from his noted. "Briefly, I can discharge my body. I can put out 1.3 million watts. Kaminari said proudly. "That quite a lot, but I'm guessing it puts you out of commission afterward, and it's not a guaranteed win either from what I've seen at the sports festival," Midoriya explained, closing his notebook and looking directly at Kaminari. "Yeah. Haha," Kaminari said as he chuckled shyly. "I got an idea," Midoriya said as he walked over to a locker in the far side of the gym. Kaminari was curious as to what Midoriya had in mind. Some of the other students began to eavesdrop a little too. Midoriya opened the locker that was full of cleaning equipment and quickly picked out the broom and made his way back to Kaminari. "All right," Midoriya said as he approached Kaminari with the broom. "A broom?" Kaminari asked with a look of visible confusion. Midoriya dismantled the broom, and ripped off the rubber coating on the broom and revealed a large hollow piece of copper. "You are going to use some electricity on me," Midoriya said as he stabbed the large rod into the floor, allowing it to stand freely. "Are you sure?" Kaminari said nervously. "Yes, I'm sure, don't be afraid," Midoriya said as he took a few steps away from the copper rod and stood a few meters from Kaminari. "Okay then," Kaminari said as he discharged some electricity. Midoriya however was unharmed and watched as the electricity shot like a bullet towards the copper pole. "Whoa! That's so cool," Kaminari exclaimed, looking over at Midoriya before doing it again. "Copper conducts electricity pretty well, maybe look into some support gear," Midoriya said as he began to make his way back. "Aizawa, hey man, thanks," Kaminari said, calling out to Midoriya. "No problem," Midoriya replied, turning to face Kaminari. Midoriya soon made his way back next to Aizawa. "Thanks," Aizawa said as he put on some eye drops. "Sure," Midoriya replied. Later that day all the students were all having fun in the living room, including Bakugo for once. The sound of laughter and students could be heard. Bakugo and Kirishima were having a conversation about their power and strength. Midoriya was rather busy as a teacher. He had to make a lesson plan for every week and he had to make sure it was appropriate. "So Kaminari, did you get your support item yet?" Mina asked, sliding over to Kaminari. "No, they are still working on it, but it's going to be awesome," Kaminari said, puffing out his chest. The students all laughed with Kaminari. "Yay, Midoriya sure knows what's up, you know," Kaminari added, "and that incident with All Might, I'm starting to think he's not so bad," Jiro said, waving her earphone jacks in the air. Bakugo got annoyed at the sound of Midoriya's name. "Yeah, I wonder what he's got planned for us tomorrow since Class 1B has the gym all day." Yoraraka added, "Hey, do any of you guys know how he became a villain?" Kaminari asked at random. The room grew silent at the question. "I'm curious as well, he's our age yet he seems so different." Momo added, a hint of sadness could be heard. "Hey Bakugo, don't you know him kinda?" "I think Aizawa said you two had history," Kirishima asked as he looked over to Bakugo. "Shut it, shitty hair." Bakugo replied angrily, "I heard he killed a bunch of heroes with his quirk." "I heard it can rip people apart," Iida said, butting into the conversation. "Really?" Kaminari said with a gasp. Bakugo sneered at that comment. He knew Midoriya was a quirkless weakling like always. "Very interesting theory," Midoriya said as he walked by and into the kitchen. Iida jumped with a loud shout and the rest of the students grew silent. "Nice to hear some of you don't despise me," Midoriya said, warming up his water. The living room was silent until Momoyarazu spoke up. "Midoriya, may I ask why you became a villain?" Momo asked nervously. Midoriya slightly cringed at the thought of his attempted suicide. "It's personal," Midoriya replied coldly. "Hey, what quirk do you have?" Kaminari asked, trying to avoid awkward silence. "This guy fucking quirkless," Bakugo said with a sneer. "Hey man, not cool." Kirishima said, "No, he's right, I am quirkless," Midoriya said, pouring hot water into a coffee mug. "Still useless as ever, Huddy-ku." Bakugo sneered yet again. "Some things never change, do they, Katsuki?" Midoriya said coldly, glaring at Bakugo. The air was tense. Someone who made himself out of nothing versus someone who was born with everything. "Rest up, tomorrow is going to be a long one," Midoriya said as he grabbed his mug and made his way to the stairs that led up to his room. "So he's quirkless?" Tenya asked everyone in the room. "I guess so, man," Kaminari said, not sure how to react. "Well, quirk or not, he's pretty nice," Mina said, raising her hands in the air. "He's quirkless. Always has been, always will be," Bakugo said rather loudly before stomping off to his room. "I suppose we should all rest up then," Momo said as she got up from the couch. "Yay," Yoraraka said as she glanced over at Bakugo. The next morning. "Good morning class," Aizawa greeted the students. "Good morning." The students greeted back. Aizawa went about his homeroom and he instructed the students to meet at ground beta. "Ground beta? Are we doing some practical training?" Kirishima asked. "Yes, so go change into your costumes and meet there," Aizawa said, dismissing the class. Midoriya was at ground beta waiting for the class when he was greeted by All Might. "Good morning, my boy." All Might greeted with a smile. "Don't call me that, Midoriya is fine," Midoriya replied, inspecting his smoke bombs. "I've been meaning to talk to you. Whenever you're ready, please make sure to let me know," All Might said, before heading towards the observation room. Midoriya didn't say a word, he simply stood in the open taking in the breeze. Class 1A soon arrived and much to Midoriya's surprise they all greeted him, all except for Bakugo of course. "So today we will be having heroes versus villains," Midoriya announced to the class. "Didn't we do this at the beginning of the year?" Kaminari asked. "Yes, Aizawa told me beforehand you all had done this exercise before. But today will be different. Instead of facing each other, you will be facing me," Midoriya explained to the students. "Like one-on-one?" Kirishima asked. "No, you will be paired in teams of 2 and 1 team of 3, here is the list," Midoriya said, handing students a clipboard of the teams. The teams went as followed: Bakugo, Yoraraka, Todoroki, Momo, Jiro/Hagakure/Kirishima, Ojiro, Kota Kaminari, Sarah Mineta, Tokoyami Mina, Asui Sato, Shoji Tenya, Aoyama, guess we're together, Hiraraka said with a smile. Quiet round face, Bakugo responded. The Todoroki and Momo pair was fairly awkward and no words were exchanged. We got this. Kirishima shouted to his two members. Yeah. Hakugura and Jiro responded with a shout of their own. Let's do this, Ojiro, said Takoda. Koda responded in a low voice. Heck yeah, we're basically unstoppable. Kaminari and Sero said in unison. Wish I had been paired with one of the girls, Mineta said, looking over to the girls. Maybe next time, Mineta. Tokoyami replied with a scoff. Girl power. Mina exclaimed, hugging Asui. Karo Asui replied with a smile. Let's do our best. Tenya said, doing his usual arm motion with, my sparkle, we can't lose. Aoyama replied with a twinkle. Alright, let's make it interesting, shall we? If you volunteer to go first and win, I will give everyone an A on Aizawa's next exam. Midoriya announced to the class in his usual bored tone. If you lose, however, it's cleaning duty for all of you for an entire week. Midoriya added. The class was hesitant but two hands shot up quickly. I just want to beat you down. Bakugo said, walking up to Midoriya. I really need the Hiraraka said, rubbing the back of her head. I suppose you both will go first. Midoriya said as he looked behind Bakugo and at the rest of the students. Anyone else? Midoriya asked. The entire class shot their hands up. I think you are looking down on us, sensei. Kirishima exclaimed. Yeah, shouted the class as they got fired up for the fight. Alright then. Midoriya said with a short chuckle. All the students except Bakugo and Hiraraka made their way to the observation room and watched as the first battle was about to begin. The rules were as followed. The heroes must defeat or restrain the villain for them to win. The same rules apply to the villain. Everyone was in position and the remaining students were in the observation room. All Might was the announcer and Aizawa was in a nearby building keeping an eye on Midoriya. Ready? All Might announced over the intercom. You ready? Round face. Bakugo asked. Yes. Hiraraka responded quickly. Just support me and watch me pound this bastard's face in. Bakugo said with an evil grin. Go. All Might said, announcing the start of the fight. Alright, Bakugo, let's see how much good your quirk will do you. Midoriya said, putting on his hood and arranging his metal mask. Next chapter, Midoriya vs Bakugo and Hiraraka.